Hello, hello. Howdy, howdy. Everybody's having a good day. I'll connect. It's not working. When it bugs out. Up. All right, should be good. Once the I could do like flat Earth and young Earth is false or something like that. But the other thing is that I suspect that interestingly enough, I suspect that most flat earthers are also young earthers. I'd be a little bit surprised if the overlap wasn't a circle, or if the Venn diagram wasn't a circle rather, or one circle with a smaller circle inside. Anyway, let's bring up our first guest. Is water wet? How's it going?
It's funny you mentioned that. I think there's a huge correlation and maybe causation between religious people and flat earthers.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true in my experience. So is water wet? Do you think that the world was created?
Oh, no, definitely not. And I came up actually to tell you.
Sorry. Let's join if you disagree. So I'm not saying that every young earth creationist is a flat earther. What I'm saying is that every flat earther is a young earth creationist. At least I suspect as much. Is water wet? It does say creationism is false. Join if you disagree. If you disagree, that would mean that you think creationism is true. If you want to let me know about something, you can DM me. But please respect the live, right? Like this is, we're looking to debate with people who are creationists. You're not that. Thoughts on the Hadron Collider? Well, it's not a Hadron Collider. It's a Hadron Collider. And yes, but it's turned... did it turn iron into gold or lead into gold? But this isn't new, actually. Maybe the iron being turned into gold, is that new? Yeah, no, it's not iron, it's lead, and this isn't new. This is more than a year old. It's neat, but it's not new. Let's bring up user 273839826828. User numbers, how's it going?
Good, yourself?
I'm doing all right. So user, do you think that the world was created?
Yeah, I would by created, yeah. I would say that, contingencies, as I am, would need to be actualized by something that isn't contingent. Yeah.
So is it your contention that like a god poofed the universe into existence, or poofed the world into existence, or like the earth into existence, or what's the view here?
Yeah, no, I don't hold to abiogenesis and poofing things into existence. I hold of, a meaningful, intentional creation.
Wait, you don't hold to abiogenesis, so how did life get here?
I'm saying that you believe in poofing things into existence with your abiogenesis consensus, right? I hold to a meaningful, intentional world which is intelligible.
Sure. So how did life get here in your view?
Poofing of things.
How did life get here in your view?
Pardon?
How did life get here in your view?
Yeah, I just told you, a meaningful and intentional creation of God.
Well, okay, but how?
What do you mean by how?
Like
the which ways he did? I would say ex nihilo, so he would create out of nothing.
So there was nothing, and then poof, there was something?
No, there was God, who is maximally great, who is
I'm just talking about like the life
actualizer, who has the ability to make matter and contingencies. Yeah.
So like I'm just referring to the life. So like on Earth, there was like just regular inorganic stuff, and then poof, there was life on Earth.
You know, if you want to learn the word poof, just like, yeah, same thing would go for your position. If we want to use the term poof, you know, prior to biological life, was there just inorganic matter?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, and then poof. Life,
yeah. Well,
right? Okay,
so
cool.
Just to
So we're on
clarify,
the same page. You
so in my
believe
view,
a random poofing? I believe
so-
in an intentional poofing.
yeah. So in my view, there wasn't actually like just like stuff that appeared. It was rather an arrangement of pre-existing stuff that became life. In your view, is it new stuff that appeared, or is it an arrangement of pre-existing stuff?
It would be an arrangement, but also the things that are inorganic came to existence by creation.
Well, sure, we can get to that. We can get to that.
Okay, dude.
But like with regard to life, so like there was inorganic stuff on Earth, and then that inorganic stuff was arranged into life, in your view?
Pardon?
So in your view, and I'm just trying to clarify here. In your view, so there's inorganic stuff on Earth. Well, and then, you know, how it got there we can talk about later, but there's inorganic stuff on Earth, there's inorganic stuff on it. And then through some act of, you know, divine intervention or some act of creation, what have you, that inorganic stuff was rearranged to become life. Is that a correct representation of your view?
Yeah, totally fine.
Okay, now did that rearranging break any laws of physics?
I'm not a physicist, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
No.
Well, do you think that it was a miracle?
I think both of our positions, yeah, it matters what you're defining a miracle to be.
Something supernatural.
Okay.
That can't be explained naturally.
Supernatural is a miracle. I mean, something with a low probability chance, for example, somebody gets hit by a car, they have a low chance of survival and they survive. Oh, it's a miracle, right?
I'm not saying that would be, I'm using miracle in a specific sense.
When I use the term miracle, it's not in the way you use miracle. So,
okay, so is there some sort of...
you can say it's a miracle. I would say your position is also a miracle.
Well, okay, so my understanding, and I'm just trying to make sure that we figure out where the actual point of disagreement is so we both so on Earth, we can talk about where the stuff on Earth comes from, but on Earth, there's inorganic stuff. And then in your view, there is some supernatural thing that happens that causes the inorganic stuff to become organic or to become life, right? And under my view, there's some natural process that happens that causes the inorganic stuff to become life. Is this like a good understanding of the key point of contention?
Sure. When you say natural, what are you referring to, though?
Like chemical processes that can just kind of happen spontaneously.
Okay.
In this context,
and when you say
anyway.
Supernatural, you're referring to something that supersedes chemical processes?
Some sort of either divine intervention or something that would not happen on its own, or could not happen on its own, rather.
Okay. Was there a time in existence prior to a chemical reaction of sorts?
A time in existence? Yeah, sure. There was a time before atoms existed in chemical.
Okay, so that would be supernatural. You concede that
No.
a supernatural exists?
No, because I was using supernatural in the context of the chemical reactions that we were talking about.
Whoa, dude, I asked you, what do you mean by natural? You said chemical reactions occurring.
Yeah,
okay?
so I was obviously in the context of the chemical reactions that we were talking about.
Wait,
obviously, I was talking about.
You can clarify.
In the context.
But let's make
I'm clarifying now. I'm clarifying now.
Okay,
I was,
totally
and I actually
fine.
clarified like 30 seconds ago too, that
It's
I'm
okay.
specifically
You can
talking about supernatural
if
and
you want to
natural in the
recant your
context
statement, that's
of the
fine.
chemistry that happened in the early Earth.
Yeah, if you want to recant your statement, that's fine. But I'm just saying.
I'm not recanting. It was just
reasoning,
I thought it was pretty clear what the context was.
Yeah, sure. When I ask you, what do you mean
Okay.
by this word? And following that, you say a supernatural exists prior to the first.
That's how the
chemical
language is being
reaction.
used.
I just want to be clear. Am I losing my mind?
Yeah, I didn't say that
did you say
supernatural
that?
things existed prior to the first chemical reaction. I didn't say that.
That's what it entails.
Well, only if you don't understand the context of the conversation that we were having.
That time would be supernatural. Do we
Only
agree?
if you understood. Only if you didn't understand the context, which is why I'm now providing the context and why I provided the context about 2 minutes ago.
Okay, dude, that's totally fine. You can provide your context. What is your context?
The
Go ahead.
context was in the definition of natural and supernatural I was giving was in the context of the origins of life on Earth.
Okay, so natural only refers to origin of life?
I was just giving you the relevant definition of natural in the context of life on Earth.
Okay, so an idiosyncratic definition that you don't use ever.
It's a narrowing of the definition so that I
Is that
didn't
an
have to go into an
idiosyncratic definition of
No, it's
natural,
a
yes or
narrowing.
no?
It's a narrowing.
Just say
No,
it's idiosyncratic.
it's not idiosyncratic.
Okay, so everybody
I was
uses
explaining what I meant by
definition of
natural in that context.
The definition of natural. We can go on the Oxford or Webster dictionary.
This is great. Do you think that this makes you look good having do you think that makes you look good crashing out over a semantic dispute when you clearly knew what I meant?
Okay,
or do you actually want to talk about substance?
Yeah, Dr. Blitz, you're projecting. I just wanted you to be a little intellectually honest and say, you know what?
I mean, you're kind of crashing out over semantic discussion of a semantic dispute.
But you can't even say that. You can't even say that.
Because you're crashing out and being like maximally uncharitable. So do you want to talk about content or do you want to talk about like some semantic dispute?
Yeah, nobody's crashing out. I'm pointing at the inconsistency in what you said.
There's not an inconsistency when you recognize that I was referring specifically because I was referring specifically to the context of the conversation that we were actually having. There's no inconsistency in that.
The context we were having is the questions I asked you that followed you to believe that there is a supernatural. Are you tracking?
What are you talking about? We were literally talking about the origins of life, and I said, in the context of the origins of life, because that's the conversation we were having, that natural means the chemical processes that can take place on their own, and supernatural would be some kind of intervention in those chemical processes.
Sure.
Now, if you want to interpret that as that's my definition for natural and supernatural broadly, then you can, but you're just misunderstanding what I'm saying, because clearly I was talking about the context that we were having a conversation about.
Fair.
So
totally
if you want to keep on doing the semantic gotcha, you can, but it's just going to make you look bad in the YouTube video that this will inevitably become.
Blitz, I said that's totally fair. Now when I asked you
do you want to talk about substance?
No, I asked you a question. You're making a supernatural natural distinction, and I asked you.
Yeah, in the context of the origins of life. In the origins of life, the supernatural natural distinction.
In general.
Oh, okay.
In general. What do you mean by natural?
In general,
make this distinction.
If you want a broad
I want to know
distinction,
what you mean by this distinction, not chemical reactions.
So I would say broadly, you could define a natural thing as some kind of thing that is part of the causal order that is described, or part of the causal order that is at least partially described by physical laws.
So is anything non-causal outside of natural?
So part of the causal order that is at least partially described by the physical laws. So I can clarify if you want. So we have some physical laws that describe some kinds of things. Like we have physical laws like the law of gravity, and that's part of a causal order. Or like gravity is part of a causal order that exists in our world, whether it's not part of the natural causal order, the supernatural causal order, that's the thing that we're talking about. And so the kinds of things that are part of the same causal order as gravity, for example, those are the kinds of things that are natural. The kinds of things that are outside of that causal order would be the things that are not natural. Does that make sense?
It makes sense what you said. Now my question was, if you're saying things that are in the causal order are natural, is something non-causal supernatural?
It could be, yeah. It depends on it depends on the kind of thing.
Okay. Do you hold anything to be non-causal?
Probably not.
Okay, very nice. So that was just the fix up there. Now, you're saying what's natural is what's in the causal order.
No, what's natural is in the causal order described by laws of physics. So you could have, in principle, you could have supernatural things that are not part of that same causal order. So like a god would not be part of that causal order because the god is not the kind of thing that is affected by, the like gravity, for example. Okay. God is kind of outside of that causal order and perhaps can influence that causal order, but is outside of it. So you could have supernatural things, and like ghosts wouldn't be like constrained by laws of physics or constrained by things constrained by laws of physics. So ghosts might be outside of that causal order as well. So ghosts could be supernatural, for example.
Okay. So what is your contention, or do you have an argument that proves creationism is false, or is this just what you like? It's a better explanation to not agree.
Yeah, so first, I think it's probably impossible for a timeless being to have causation at all, to partake in causation at all, whether part of the natural order or not. And beyond that, the kinds of things that are typically used to, or the kinds of things that are typically accounted for as far as creationism, like the origins of life, the origins of the universe, these kinds of things, these are better accounted for in terms of physical and natural models.
You said the origin of life?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, when you say, okay, origin of life science, right? I don't think that's well accounted for. I don't think that's well established. I mean, where
it's
do
better
you
accounted
see
for
this as a better as a better evidence?
Yeah, because it has some sort of explanation rather than no explanation at all.
Okay, but again, under a creation model, you are offering an explanation.
Okay, so how did God create life?
Yeah, God created all things ex nihilo, and we already went over this.
Oh wait,
God
hold on. Now you're
created
contradicting
Adam
yourself.
and Eve from pardon?
You're contradicting yourself. You said earlier, in fact, you agreed to this
I didn't
explicitly.
finish my sentence. And then God created Adam and
go
Eve
ahead.
from organic matter.
So then God didn't create everything ex nihilo.
God created everything ex nihilo. Sure, if we want to be pedantic. Yes.
God didn't create Adam ex nihilo.
God created majority of things ex nihilo.
So not everything or everything?
Yeah, not everything.
Okay, so God didn't create life ex nihilo. So how did God create life?
We already went over this. I said, organizing organic matter.
Yeah, so how? How did that work? What was the process?
Yeah, the process is, I can't really go into depth.
Okay, so it sounds like you have no explanation, whereas I can at least give you a partial explanation.
Wait, you referring to a hypothetical process saying that your explanation is better is just insufficient.
I mean, it has more explanatory power. Now, you might not think the explanation is correct, but it does have more explanatory power.
By you positing, okay, I could see how you could say that, sure. Look, I don't know the end all be all on, the step-by-step process of how God created X thing, and you're saying, look, I have this process, it's kind of understood, we're still looking into it, therefore more explanatory power.
Yep.
I could see that to a certain extent, sure, but nevertheless, I don't think that falsifies creationism. Maybe it's just my inability to articulate this thing, right? So it's not necessarily the better explanation. I'm just not the best at articulating how God does X. Maybe I don't know if you study biology, right? I don't know if you study abiogenesis or origin of life. Do you? Are you in that field?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so if I get somebody who's in the origin of life field to explain the process, you would agree that they would be better at explaining it than you?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Vice versa. So I'm not going to concede to that point that's necessarily a better explanation for my inability to explain the process.
Is there anyone that, is there anyone that I could talk to that would be able to better explain how God created life?
1,000%. There's
who?
It definitely matters what position you hold. There's many God concepts, so obviously it's going to be from different narratives. But again, somebody who is, we can look at the Catholic Church or someone who represents the Catholic Church, someone who
they don't have an explanation.
Pardon?
They don't have an explanation.
So you've spoken to all of them and you haven't heard an explanation?
No, I mean, the official position of the Catholic Church is that this is not something that is explained, right? In fact, obviously this is the case because the only information that anyone would have about this would be found in the Bible, and there's no information about the Bible that says anything about how God created life, just that God did.
And there's no issue with that. I mean, even if we appeal to abiogenesis, I don't even see how that. Let's concede that point. Let's say abiogenesis is true. How does that undermine creationism?
Well, the creationist view that you were taking was that God created life on Earth.
Okay.
And so if
and he
abiogenesis is
wait,
true,
wait,
then
wait,
God
wait, wait,
didn't create life on Earth.
pause. The reason I'm conceding that point is because the process of which he did that could be through something as abiogenesis. That's why I'm saying how that doesn't undermine the point. You understand?
Oh, okay. Well, so now you're just conceding that the process
Yeah,
by
I'm
which it happened
granting
is the
that.
natural
I'm granting
process.
that, sure.
So
Yeah,
then,
let's
so
grant
then
that.
God plays no causative role in it.
No, because now we have inorganic matter that exists, correct?
Yeah, sure. That
So
was
how
the
did
baseline.
inorganic matter? Okay, now we just push the question back. How
Right,
did
but the question
inorganic
that you
matter?
were the position that you were holding was that God created life on Earth. You also were holding that God created the inorganic matter
Yeah,
that
great. So now we're
existed
just
on Earth. But
yeah,
you've now conceded that creationism with regard to life on Earth is just non-tenable.
No, not at all. I said my inability to articulate that position has nothing to do with the totality of the position, but let's grant this for the conversation because your statement is that falsifies creationism. When I'm saying no, a creationist
it gives us reason to
merely
prefer. To be clear, the statement that is creationism is false. There's two reasons for that I've offered, and I mentioned both actually. The first is that natural and physical explanations tend to be better explanations. They have more explanatory power and they better account for the data. The second bit, though, was that I don't think that God can be part of a causal order if God is timeless.
Okay, so then we would move to the second point where you would articulate, why that's the case.
Yeah, so being part of a causal order, we can say that a cause is a kind of explanation that is temporal in nature. If God is atemporal, of course, God is not part of a causal order then, as God would not be temporal.
Pardon? So God isn't, sorry, I just had to grab a charger quickly. God isn't part of the causal order because he is not temporal.
Yes.
Is your position.
Yep.
And therefore, God can't do X?
God can't be the cause of anything.
The position here is God is prior to time and he actualizes time itself.
What does prior to time mean?
Logically, prior as time would be a metaphysical dependency. It would be a dependency relationship on God's existence.
That's fine. It's like some sort of grounding relation. That's fine, but it's not a causal relation.
What, that he's logically prior? So what I'm saying here is God's first act, right?
Sorry, what's an act?
Would be the... Pardon?
What's an act? What's an atemporal act?
Well, it's an uncreated eternal act.
What does it mean for something to be eternal if it's atemporal?
Well, by eternal, I'm saying that two times. I said uncreated. That's what I meant.
Okay, so you meant
uncreated.
So by eternal, you just mean uncreated. Okay, so what does it mean for it to be? What does it mean for there to be an act at all? There's no time if it's atemporal.
Yeah, so that first act, which would be the initiation, right, would invoke time, making it a logical dependency on God's act for time to exist at all.
So, and just to be clear, it sounds like you're saying that there is an eternal act of creating time. Is that the claim?
Yeah.
Okay, and yet that eternal act creates a beginning?
Yeah, because, look, let's say in another sense, we can say, look, time is eternal. Okay, but this has a dependency relationship which relies on this action that is outside of time, which is eternal. But when I say eternal, I'm using the word uncreated, but colloquially, what we would understand eternal to be would be like lasting forever, it's always been, right?
Yeah, so if time is eternal, then it's uncreated as per your definition.
I'm saying I'm using those terms differently just for the audience.
You're using the same word in two different ways in the same sentence.
Yeah, I said it colloquially.
Okay, sure.
You would understand. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that time. You're saying that time is. You're saying that time is eternal in the sense that that for every day there's a day before it, and yet it also was created.
Yeah, it would be a dependency relationship. So
when was it created?
Let me take that. I'll take the word eternal back. Right? Has time has been a lot around as long as time has been.
It was okay. So. Cool. Well, okay. I mean, that's trivially true. But so are you saying that for every day that there is a day before it? Or are you saying that there was a first day?
Yeah, there would be a first day.
Okay, if there was a first day, how is it the case that time was eternally being created?
Yeah, because that first act, right, even though it was eternally acted upon, existed, making it the case that
Did the
case
act
that would
exist?
be the initial state.
So did the act exist absent the time?
Pardon?
Did the act exist absent time?
We can say in a sense, sure, but no. Like the actualization occurred when time started.
Actualization occurred. Okay. So
Yeah.
that means that the actualization couldn't occur until time started?
Yeah.
Okay, but if time didn't exist, how did the actualization occur?
Again, it's a 1-in-1. So I'm saying for the act to exist, the time has to occur.
Right, but if time didn't occur, then the actualization can't happen.
Occurred.
That's begging the question. It seems like you're saying that in order for the actualization to happen, time has to exist.
Yeah.
But time doesn't exist. You know, there's the state of God sans creation, right? And time doesn't exist in that state. And if time doesn't exist in that state, then the actualization can't exist either.
Okay, why do you say that?
You just agreed that the actualization can't occur unless time exists.
So God, yeah. So in a temporal act, the first act would have to rely on God acting upon it. And
Yeah,
that would be the first change of state when it was prior to and then after the fact.
I don't see how this addresses my contention. I mean, I can just formalize it for you if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And look, I'm not trying to be like super bad faith. I'm just trying to understand what you said based off of the words that you said. So here's a notepad. Okay. Oh, I should have your face up here. So then see, not much of a profile picture though. It's kind of empty. Okay, so we have P1. If actualization is to occur, time must exist. P2. In the state where God exists sans creation or sans the universe, whatever you want to, we can just call it sans creation, there is no time. Conclusion, in the state where God exists sans creation, actualization cannot occur. We agree on this? Is this a good summary of, are these premises a good summary of your view?
Yeah, if actualization is to occur, time must exist in a state where God exists. There is no time in the state where is that just SANS?
Yeah, sans, like without.
Sans. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. In the state where God exists, sans creation, actualization cannot occur. So, I mean, this is a trick one. I would, again, I'm not going to necessarily hold to that 1-of-1, but when I say the first act, which would be the change of states, right? Then time existed, right? That would be the first act.
I know that's right?
Of creation.
I understand, but like, where do you disagree with either of these premises?
Well, again, for actualization, God is actualized, right? So yeah, he exists, right? That would be, so not like, we would have to get into terms of like,
okay, so actually we can do this. We can change this because that's a fair objection. We can say if potency is to become actualized, time must exist. In the state where God exists sans creation, there is no time. Therefore, in the state where God exists sans creation, potency cannot become actualized.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is going to be the real distinction. Is I think you want something to be temporally actualized.
I'm not. I mean, look, these are premises that presumably you agree with these. I mean, you said this one, not explicitly, but you said this one. You said that in order for the actualization to happen, you need time, and I imagine that you agree that God is timeless. and that there was a state of affairs where God existed alone. So, like, if you reject one of these premises, then like fine, but given these two premises, the conclusion follows.
No, because again, I'm holding to eternal acts. So these are acts outside of time that have a temporal effect. So
I don't know.
maybe
like,
I definitely misspoke there when I said the first act, therefore time, because what I'm referring to is eternal acts, right? But I would, we try to reason it down to the first act, right? Like the actualization, but it's an eternal, uncreated act prior to time that has a temporal effect, is really what the point here.
So, okay, so, and that's fine. It sounds like you want to reject P1, which is fine. I can understand that, perhaps you misspoken, but look, that happens to the best of us. So, it's okay, so you're saying that there is one act that has eternally been happening in a sort of timeless way, and by eternal you mean like in an uncreated way. Fine. So was there ever a state of affairs where God existed alone?
Yeah.
Okay, so in that state of affairs, was the act still eternal? The act of creation still eternal?
Yeah, and then it had a temporal effect.
Right, sure. I'm just thinking about like the atemporal world that God lives in. So there was an eternal act. Presumably it means it was never not there.
Yeah, it was always there. It's there.
And okay, but there was also a state where God existed alone. So there was a state of affairs where the act was there and God was there, but there was no creation.
So God, look, he doesn't necessarily need to act. I just want to point that out as well. I'm going to hold a distinction between the two. So he can, I'm going to hold the position that he doesn't necessarily act out creation. He chooses to. Now that's going to be an eternal act. Okay.
Sure, I'm not
and that's going to have a temporal effect. So meaning that, if we want to say, the prior to time was God, it's because his eternal act has a temporal cause, which is the initiation of time.
Sure. That's not my contention. My contention is that you're saying that the act coexists with God, so God is doing the act eternally. But there's also a state of affairs where the world doesn't exist, right? Which means that there's a state of affairs where God is acting to create the world, but there is no world.
Yeah, I think you're looking at this from a temporal lens.
No, I'm just trying to look at it in look, is it always the case?
Time when God, this is what
I'm not saying there's a time. I'm saying there's a state of affairs.
There's a state of affairs, but you're referring to it temporally. You're saying there's a time when God acts and there's no time of creation. That's what you're referring to.
No, what I'm saying is that timelessly, there's this timeless act and this timeless God, and they coexist. And there is a state of affairs where they existed, but the physical universe didn't, right? There is a state of affairs where God was alone. If that's the case, then it seems like that means that there was a state of affairs, and I'm using the word that was, but ignore the temporal language. There's a state of affairs where God is acting, and yet there's no world, which means that the action isn't doing anything.
That's what I'm saying. You're looking at this from a temporal lens.
No, I'm just looking at it from a causal lens.
Should have Pardon?
I'm just looking at it from sort of. I'm looking at it from some sort of like whatever you think creation is. It seems like if the act happens, then the effect must happen. The actualization must happen. Otherwise, what is the act doing?
Okay, and that's what I'm saying. You're looking at that from a temporal lens. I would say that's a category error.
I'm very intentionally not looking at it from a temporal lens. So if the act exists, is it actualized? Is it whatever the act does? Dr. Is it actualized?
Blitz, you're referring to cause and effect, and you're saying if there's a cause.
I changed my language because I wanted to specifically avoid temporal language.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
That's why I corrected myself.
Looking at it from a temporal lens.
That's why. I'm specifically not. I just we slip on our language occasionally, and that's fine. My point is that there's an act, but the effect of the act doesn't exist. The thing that's actualized doesn't exist even though the act exists. Make that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if it is not, it's not the weakest objection, but the universe is going to exist as the effect of the eternal act. Now, the timing of that is going to resort to the effect, because prior to that there is no time.
But how can you have? So what determines the timing?
It's pardon?
What determines the timing?
Here's also my position is, I'm going to say right now in this specific conversation, I can say I don't know.
Okay.
Because I don't know, but overall, I'll have to look into it a bit, right? But overall, it might just be an appeal to mystery, right? Especially on that contention.
Surely you understand that that's a cop-out, right?
It's not at all a cop-out.
Okay. I mean, like, if you're going to say that an appeal to mystery isn't a cop-out, then I could just say, well, I don't know how creationism is false. It's just a mystery. But it still is.
Yeah, you could say that. You just said it.
And you couldn't refute that?
Again, it's not about just a refutation. If I have an internally consistent theory and you have a internally consistent theory, right? Now we go into the battling.
But you don't have an internally consistent theory, which is why you're not able to provide an explanation or an answer to this question. If it was internally consistent, you would know what that answer is. But there's a tension there, and that's the inconsistency. And you're saying, well, it's not a real tension. It's just mysterious. That doesn't make it internally consistent.
Well, for one, let me make this clear. I said I don't know. Yep. So like I said, this is something I'll have to look into for your specific objection. I don't want to say anything totally nutso, because that's reasonable. So then, like in this conversation, there probably is an answer. I'm gonna look into it, and I'll maybe send you a message about it. But for me, yeah, I'm gonna appeal to mystery, because your contention is, I'm gonna say that's a category error, because even the way you're thinking about it is a temporal cause and effect. Because there's an eternal act, there has to be this eternal effect, is kind of where you're getting at. And
no, what I'm saying is that you can't have the act without the actualized. That in some sense the actualized is so given the act, the actualized exists. Otherwise, there's some explanation required as to, when the actualized, and I say when because now once you're invoking that there is some state of affairs that all of a sudden changes so that the potency or the potential can become actual, now you're invoking time. But we can't have time here. So you need some sort of non-temporal, perhaps like grounding explanation for how it could be that the act does not coexist with the actualized.
Yeah.
In one state of affairs, but the act does coexist with the actualized in a different state of affairs.
Okay, so are you saying that a temporal effect necessarily needs a temporal change in its cause?
I think that's probably true, but that's not the argument.
Well, that's kind of where you're getting at, because I'm saying, look, it's going to be this eternal act, and you're saying, why is there an eternal act without the effect eternally?
Right. Yeah. Well, so that is what I'm saying, but that's not a temporal statement. It's just like, look, you have a state of affairs where there's this act, and so presuming that God never fails his actions, right? Presuming that God never fails his actions, then one would expect that at all moments where the act happens, the effect, or I don't want to say effect because effect implies temporality, but like whatever the outcome of the act is, like whatever the thing that's grounded. So you have the grounder and you have the grounded thing. What the thing that's grounded by the act must coexist if God succeeds in his action, right? Otherwise, you need some sort of explanation as to how you can have an act without the production of the act, without the thing that the act produces, and not say that the thing doing the acting failed.
I do think that's an assumption, right? Because you're saying the eternal. Well, the total premise, like my prior statement was, so you're saying the eternal act would require the eternal effect of creation, making it the case that they exist one in one.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise there's
Okay.
some sort of explanation as to, and when, I don't want to use when, but like there's some sort of explanation as to the change in states between act without creation and act with creation. What explains that?
Well, the explanation to that is, I'm not going to say I necessarily know, but the contention you're putting forth would require that, there can't be any sort of temporal qualification to make it the case that the effect isn't eternal with the act.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, so if you're going to say, hey, they need to exist one in one, we have the eternal act, and we would have to have the effect one in one, so they're both eternal now. Okay, they're one together, but I'm
or
saying
perhaps they coexist. They coexist in all states of affairs. Maybe we don't want to use the word eternal, but yeah, they coexist in all states of affairs.
Yeah, but that assumption is going to say that there has to be this temporal qualification that they have to be that way.
Well, I don't think that that's the assumption. I think the assumption is just that if God is supposed to not fail, then I mean, okay, so let's just back up and let's just think about you and I doing an action. And I know that we're not making potential things actual, but like just bear with me. If I go and let's say that I start churning butter, right? So I start churning butter, and I'm just churning butter for a long time. Now, if at any moment of time, and again, I'm using temporal words just for the analogy, at any moment of time, you look in the milk, I don't know how you churn butter. You look in the thing that you churn butter in, and there's no butter in there, then you'd be like, oh, well, you just have failed to churn butter, or you have failed to make butter at this point. The only time that you would say that I've succeeded at making butter is when me churning butter coexists with the butter. Maybe it wasn't a perfect analogy, but what I'm suggesting is that if somehow there is no creation, and yet God is creating, well then, like, did God fail? Did God's act of creation fail to manifest the creation? Like, why is there a creating act but no creation?
Sure. No, and Blitz, I do have to go soon. I'm just on my lunch break for work, but I think we did have somewhat productive dialogue. Maybe I didn't give you all the correct answers, but here, like you said, I can, because I don't know the answer, I can just appeal to mystery on my answer, because you are asking the hows, the which, the whats, okay? But on the opposite end, I'm going to say, look, you haven't demonstrated any contradiction. I think you are just assuming that an eternal act would result in an eternal effect based off assumption. When I'm saying
I could demonstrate a contradiction, but then you would just reject one of the premises and say, oh, well, that premise is false because of mystery.
So there's no contradiction. I mean, there you go.
I mean, like, you could say that there's no contradiction in any view and just always appeal to mystery.
I mean, if you want to lay it out,
it's just like a cop out, right?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. I think that, look, I'm going to be a fallible human versus this God. I'm not going to know everything about God and the wits and the whats. Sure. So yeah, to a certain extent, you're going to appeal to mystery when we're talking about this vast thing. When you're a small thing, I mean, clearly you won't have all the answers. It's that simple. Okay, if I have a finite mind and I'm trying to describe an infinite mind, obviously I'm not going to meet that burden, and I'm going to somewhat have to rely on mystery, because you don't have the totality of an infinite mind.
So, but then, I mean, then it does just follow that using that same reasoning, you couldn't claim that any view is a contradiction, right? Unless it explicitly has a contradiction in the terms itself. Like, you couldn't come to any contradiction synthetically. Like, you could only come to analytic contradictions.
Okay, yeah, I don't see how that follows. My personal view versus, look, if you're going to do an internal critique on somebody, it has nothing to do with my personal view.
Sure it does. I'm critiquing your personal view.
Okay, but this is an external critique. This is an internal critique. That's what I said. If you're going to do an internal critique,
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with my personal view. I could believe in spaceships, unicorns, and the moon landing, right? But when you're, getting your view internally critiqued, that's where it's going to lead to a contradiction, and that's where you have an inconsistent theory. And then
Where's the inconsistency? You have to go. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, just in general, like if a view is paradoxical or contradictory, it's going to fall under contradiction internally.
Like this one. Yeah, the one that I just offered you falls under contradiction.
I mean, you're assuming that to be the case. I don't think you've demonstrated that at all.
So, okay, we can just open up a notepad.
Yeah, open up the notepad.
Okay, we'll open up the notepad. I know you have to go, so I'm not going to keep you for long. But I'll just quickly say this. So if God makes no mistakes, or if God never fails, I should say, never fails, then God always achieves, always succeeds in his goals. The language could be improved. If God seeks to actualize if one of God's goals is to actualize a potential, then when God actualizes a potential, the potential is actualized. P3, there exists a state of affairs where God exists sans creation, but the act of creation, or sans creation, but with the act of creation. So this is just saying that the act of creation is eternal with God, but creation is not. P4. Actually, we can change this from sans creation to sans the actualization of potential creation. But with the act of actualizing the potential creation. So hopefully we agree so far. So there exists a state of affairs where God exists sans the actualization of potential creation, but with the act of actualizing the potential creation. This is from P2. It follows that from P3 and P2, it follows that the I'm sorry. We need another thing in P2. And God never fails. Then when God actualizes a potential, that potential is actualized. So from P3, we have that and we probably also want to add that God's goals is to actualize the potential, although we don't need to add that in here. So we have a state of affairs where God exists and the action exists, but the actualization doesn't exist, which means that we have the negation of this clause, which means it follows that either one of God's goals is not to actualize a potential, or God fails. That's a conclusion from P2 and P3. And then we have a conclusion from P1 and C1. Oh no, actually, we probably just want P1 to be God never fails. We have that, this is just from disjunction, we have that one of God's goals is not to actualize a potential. And then we have another premise, P4, God does indeed have the goal to actualize a potential creation, say, or we can just say actualize potential, does indeed have the goal to actualize a potential. And now we just have a contradiction between the conclusion and P4. So if you accept P1, P2, and P3, and P4, that God has this goal to actualize potential, then you just have a direct contradiction.
Again, I don't think God has any unfulfilled goals, right? So all these goals.
Then you don't think that creation ever exists, or that God ever exists sans creation.
Pardon?
You don't think that God ever exists sans creation, because if one of God's goals is to create, and the fulfillment of that goal is the actualization, then if there are no unfulfilled goals, then there's never a state of affairs where God exists absent creation.
No, because look, there's going to be the eternal act with the temporal effect. So,
Right. But
again,
his goal is the actualization, not just the act, right?
yeah, I was going to say, look, P3, there's going to be a state of affairs where God exists, sans. I've never used that word. It's actually interesting. You use it so commonly. Yeah, with that, there we go. The actualization of potential, but creation, but with the act of actualizing the potential creation. But I understand what you're saying. I'm saying, look, there's no unfulfilled goals of God, but I am introducing the temporal effect. You're saying, hey, that temporal effect is going to be one of him. But I'm just not going to. You're on mute.
Damn it. Okay, so if God never has any unfulfilled goals, then that means that the goal of creation must coexist with him eternally.
Well, no, because what I'm saying is creation, right? I understand what you're saying by eternal, sure. But when
Eternal
I
in the
say,
sense that you think God is eternal.
oh no, because
Like-
that means
Like
No,
there's
no,
never
no.
a state of affairs where God exists but the world doesn't.
no. I'm going to say, because when I say eternal, I'm really referring to uncreated and created.
God has no unfulfilled goals. P2. P2, God, one of, here, let me scroll down. One of God's goals is for there to be an actualized world. Conclusion. And then we want P3. Whenever, I don't want to say whenever, for all states of affairs, or we should say that God is unchanging. P4, if God is unchanging, then God's goals are unchanging. Conclusion 1, God's goals are unchanging. P5, what do we want? We want next, if God exists eternally, then God's goals exist eternally. God exists eternally. Conclusion 2, God's goals exist eternally. P7, if something exists eternally and is unchanging, what do we want? Actually, that's just trivially like we don't even need that premise. We don't need it at all. So God's goals are unchanging. God's goals exist eternally. And then we have conclusion, or premise 7, I guess. If God has no unfulfilled goals, and God's goals are eternal and unchanging, then if God has, then all of God's goals, this is trivially the case, by the way, are eternally fulfilled. And then we have conclusion from P2 and P7. The actualization of the world, the goal of the actualization of the world is eternally fulfilled. P8, if the actualization of the world is eternally fulfilled, the world is eternal. Conclusion, the world is eternal. This follows from P3 and P8.
Okay, in this argument, you are using eternal differently than I am.
I'm using eternal in exactly the same way.
Okay, by uncreated, but look, if his goal, which is an eternal goal, you're for one, you're assuming that there's a state of affairs where God's goals are unfulfilled, right?
No, what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is that if you assume the state of affairs is such that God's goals are always fulfilled, then that means that the world always exists.
No, because God's fulfilled goal is the eternal act of creating a temporal order, which is dependent on his being, making it the case that this wait.
He could create a temporal order with no beginning.
Pardon?
He could create a temporal order with no beginning.
The temporal, if God's goal is to create a temporal with a beginning, okay,
well, then you get a contradiction.
No, there's no contradiction there. I know this argument is no.
Okay, so we can say
you
if God
did it on
exists
the fly. I would say you could probably write a
God
much
exists
better
eternally,
argument.
i.e. has no beginning, then God's goals exist eternally, i.e. have no beginning. And so we can just verify that throughout this argument, has no beginning is consistent. So God's goals exist eternally, God exists eternally. These all mean have no beginning. Surely you agree with that? And then if we say that God has no unfulfilled goals and God's goals are eternal and unchanging, then all of God's goals are eternally fulfilled. Fulfilled without ever having been unfulfilled, so that the fulfilled thing has no beginning. That's what it means to be eternally fulfilled. The goal of the actualization of the world is eternally fulfilled, i.e. the fulfilled actualization of the world has no beginning. If the actualization of the world is eternally fulfilled, the world is eternal, so has no beginning. No, this works perfectly, actually. Has no beginning. So yeah, no, this argument just gets you to the world has no beginning if you take the view that God never has unfulfilled goals and that God's goals are unchanging.
Yeah. So I'm going to let's scroll up because you have a lot of premises there. I would like to contend with one of them. I do have to go in 4 minutes, so
that's fine. That's fine. I understand.
So I'll give my one rebuttal, Blitz. We could.
Sure.
I'll
even give you the last word if you want.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying here. What I'm saying is God's eternal goals being fulfilled, which is the creation of a T1, we could say, can be eternally fulfilled with the creation of T1.
So are you saying that the T1 exists eternally?
No, because when I say creation, eternal, I'm saying uncreated, created. There's going to be a dependency relationship. This T1 is dependent on God, making it contingent.
Sure, it can be dependent on God and still exist eternally.
So then it's not eternal.
It can be dependent on God and still exist eternally.
Okay, that's the distinction I'm making. I'm saying no, it cannot. I'm not using. That's why maybe I shouldn't. I should say.
Wait, why can't
created and uncreated?
Why can't it be dependent on God and still exist? Like, look, you think that God's goals depend on God, right?
Pardon?
Do you think that God's goals depend on God?
God's goals depend on God?
Yeah.
I don't see God's goals as some, outside contingency.
I mean, they like, obviously, if God didn't exist, God's goals wouldn't exist, right? Like, obviously, God's goals depend on God.
Yeah, we could say that, but that's going to be an internal.
Sure, but the point is that God's goals are eternal, and yet. Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
My
but my point
brain
is
wouldn't
you can.
exist if I didn't exist. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. But my point is that you can have something that's eternal but still depends on God.
Yeah, sure. God.
So like T1 could be eternal and still depend on God.
For example, the distinction here is this is an external thing that exists, being time, versus an internal relationship with one's own being. So
I don't see how being external means that it can't be eternal. I don't see how being external means that it can't be eternal.
I hear you, Blitz, and we've had a great discussion, but I do have to run.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Thanks for your time, brother. Take care.
Thanks for being here. He definitely cooled down after the beginning, but he's still going on YouTube. He earned that for himself. Oh. You're not supposed to see that. That's just my notes that I use when I'm recording conversations. Let's read some super chats, if there are any. I know that people don't like philosophy. From Gretchen with the $5. If finite minds can't define anything infinite, and he slags it all off as mystery, then he loses all ability to make any God claims whatsoever. That's a good point. I mean, like, the thing is, and I was getting at this, like, once you say that something's a mystery, once you're allowed to appeal to mystery, like, you can just say that anything is anything, and there's just nothing there. All right, let us bring up our next guest. Just double check on Discord. I believe that I spoke with Doubting Thomas fairly recently, so let's bring up Teneber. Teneber, you were on the show. Teneber? Teneber,
Thanks for
can you hear me?
yes. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes.
Teneber, can you hear me?
I don't have a like computer or something.
I think the connection is just really, really bad. All right, let's bring up, I guess next is the Casimir. An interesting name. The Casimir. How's it going?
Hello. Hey, how's it going? You can hear
Doing
me?
all right. Yeah, I can. Casimir, do you think that the world was created?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I don't know if you, and I messaged like a couple of times in your chat thing, and like and do you happen to still have that notepad thing you had a second ago and
I
talking to the guy?
literally just closed it.
Oh man, okay, that's fine. Because there were a couple of things in there that you were mentioning, and I'm just like, I can make so much sense of this, but it's like, but so that's why I was trying to get in here. So, but if you would, so real quick, just for any like Christians or whatever who are also or just general creationists who are in the chat, I'm going to preface by saying I'm going to say some things. You're probably going to disagree with me immediately, but I'm going to explain what I mean. So,
Okay. So why should I think that the world was created?
Because I think it is profoundly identical to how authors work.
Profoundly identical to how you think what is profoundly identical to how authors work?
It's how so God's relationship with creation, I think, is identical to an author's relationship.
No, but
with
I'm
a
asking,
book
why
or
should I
with a
think
story.
that God created anything?
Because so there's a lot of things that so the creation trajectory. So you have how the devil works. You have why Jesus came, and also on top of that with like how he's described as like Christ being the Word and why he died and how that's prophetic of multiple things. I can get into all this, but I do kind of have to like sort of build some groundwork for it. And so if you wouldn't mind, so you were having like the sort of rules and premises. Can you pull up your notepad real quick? I have a couple of sort of
It's the file is gone.
well, like just like a blank thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to make an argument for why I should think that?
Yeah, I'm gonna lay out a few sort of mechanics on how I understand the world to work.
Okay. I hope that this will be hopefully an argument of some kind.
Yeah, it'll
Okay,
all
okay.
come. I just need to lay some groundwork. So
Yeah, sure.
rule one, and again, like I said, I'm gonna say something.
Imagine you mean
people are
premise one. Go ahead.
Yeah, premise one. So, so God is allowed to die when eternity elapses. So what I mean by
Okay.
this,
Yeah, go ahead. I have no idea what this means.
So what I mean by this is that from an author's perspective, I as an author, for example, if I am quote unquote God over my story that I'm writing, and like it's just like a fiction or whatever. If I'm writing that, from my perspective, I am technically eternal over my story because I can page back and forth. If I read through words and I pause on a word, I'm essentially stopping time. So I'll also say this real quick. Premise two.
By the way, just to be clear, eternity doesn't mean that you can time travel or that you can stop time. That's not what eternity means.
Yeah. I know. I'll get into all this. So premise two. So time is a natural, unavoidable consequence of things happening before and after other things.
Okay.
So, for example, still going back to premise one a little bit, I'll sort of unify these. Is that if I'm writing a book and you're like, say you're reading through each like word at a time, if I pause on a word, I am effectively pausing time. So, and because I am outside of that.
So so we don't need to formalize this yet. Just summarize the argument briefly, and then if we need to formalize it, we can. But I have a feeling that formalization probably isn't going to be a particularly fruitful way forward with this conversation.
So
why not just summarize roughly what the argument is for why I should think that a God created the world?
because he enjoys it.
But that's like assuming that like this God thing exists, right? Why should I think that like there is a God that created the world?
I genuinely think that the proof of that is because if we are made in God's image, and if we are made to have the same sort of inclinations and desires that God has, for example, like wanting to create things, wanting to like have offspring and all this and all these other types of things, if we have that, then I have basically extrapolated that out to where it just makes sense for us to also exist by extension. And one sort of source of that purely is that in Revelation it says that all things are and were made for his pleasure. In other words, God just makes stuff because he likes making stuff. No different than me as an author. I write my book because
I don't think that God made stuff. Like, in fact, I don't even think that God exists.
That's why I'm explaining it from an author's perspective using my book, because
right. But my point is like, it seems like the first thing that you have to do is you have to give me a reason to think that a God exists that can make the world.
That's part of why I'm going into how, because one of the other questions you were getting at earlier is how, like, if something along the lines of like creation doesn't, I'm butchering this, but it's something along the lines of like how creation like can't exist because God has already fulfilled it, or if he can't fulfill it and whatever. Like, it was kind of weird, which it makes sense how it kind of all trickles down in the way that you wrote it. But, and I say it makes sense to the extent of it does come off as sort of a paradox, which is why, again,
if it's paradoxical, then either the paradox needs to be resolved or you end up with a contradiction.
Which is why I'm resolving the paradox by going from an author's perspective, because you identify God as being eternal, which is true from our perspective, but and at the same time, if we are to assume, for example, if he's up there, like above our reality, just the same as I'm an author above the reality of my characters, if he's up there, technically, this is why I said at the very beginning, God can die when eternity elapses, is because technically, if unbeknownst to us and impossible for us to know, if he's up there and he ages, then
so if you assume that God exists in time, then the critique goes away. But then God's not the origin of time; it's not the origin of everything.
No, so let me finish. So if he's up there and let's say he, like, for like, if we were to characterize creation itself as him writing a book, for us, he is developing or writing the book, which is creation, but because he is outside of our time, he comes off as eternal to us. So anything he does will look.
But he's still temporal in his own sense, is what you're saying.
You could 100% see him as temporal in his own sense.
Okay, but from our perspective, if that's the case, then he just didn't create time.
So this is why I go to the. He may have
created our time, but not time. Period.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, and that's why I said the second thing about how time is a natural consequence of things happening before and after other things. Because if you're writing,
but that's like a nonsense statement, because
really.
you can't invoke time. No, I mean it is like you can't invoke time in using things like before and after and say that time's a consequence of before and after. Time is the thing that must exist in order for before and after to exist.
So can I explain how, like, just exemplary
Sure.
how I sort of see this? So I'll give two examples. One is very simple. The other one goes to like the book example. The first example is if I were to count 1, 2, 3, and we lift a couch. We have a rate of time that we can go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, lift. We have a rate, and then also on top of that, we go 1, 2, lift. The 1 and 2 establish a rate of at least 3 things. But if I just go 1 and we lift, we're just going to be confused because there's no reference point for anything. So the fact that we know the measure of things is because the 1 and the 3 are on the outside, or at least the 3 counts. For example, like the 1, 2 lift, the 1 and the 3 can contextualized by the 2. That's where I get the before and after, and the time exists as a consequence of before and after. Another, actually, I'll give two,
but I mean, it's just like you can't have before and after without time.
Exactly. Well, that's why I say time is a natural consequence of things happening. Because here's another example.
Okay, so it sounds like you're just saying that. It sounds like that what you're saying is that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah,
it's something like time exists so long as before and after exist.
So
and
here's
vice
where
versa.
here's where I can get into the book example, and I'll just go straight.
I don't know if the book example helps us, because like, look, if you think that God exists outside of time, then there's just a question of where did God's time come from.
So so this is I can't explain, so I cannot explain so far as like God up there. I don't know what he's doing. I can just explain.
Okay,
his
so then
relationship
what reason do we have to think that God actually is like an author did create the world? What's the reason for that?
Because the relationship between us and him. And so
us and so look, people can have a relationship with like Voldemort, but Voldemort doesn't actually exist, right?
Well, I don't mean relationship as in like personal. I just mean like I guess like the technical. I don't know how to word it, but it's like, the sort of. It's like, and like I like how I said my relationship between me and my book. Like obviously, like, we don't know each other, but it's like that's like
okay, but
whatever
so
that interaction or like
okay,
me and
that's what you
story,
mean.
or like
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
but look, it sounds like you're presupposing that this God exists. Otherwise, that relationship doesn't exist.
I think we're this is perfectly probably on just the difficulty I'm having with my vocabulary, but but I think we're looking at quote unquote relationship a little differently, because again I don't mean it as if like relationship between like me personally and
I know I'm using the word relationship in the same way that you are. For example, it's not the case that there is a relationship between me and the book I'm writing, because I'm not writing a book. That relationship doesn't exist.
No, but there is a relationship between you and like that.
No, there's not, because there's no relationship there, because a relationship is a two-sided thing, right? If it's a two-sided thing and the second side doesn't exist, the relationship doesn't exist.
But it does exist, because I'm.
How does the relationship?
The book is a consequence of making it.
No, but I'm not. So I'm not there. There is no relationship between me and the book I'm writing, because there is no book I'm writing. Does that make sense?
I'm struggling to see what exactly.
Are you filming a movie right now?
For the sake of the hypothetical, I'll say yes, I am.
Okay. Are you currently
just try and track along with your hypothetical?
Are you currently skydiving?
Currently, I'll play along. So no, I'm not currently skydiving.
Okay, I don't think it takes much to play along with that, because it's obviously the case. Okay, so the relationship with you and skydiving on August 17th, 2026 at 10:12 a.m. Pacific time is non-existent, right? Because there is no you skydiving on August 17th, 2026 at 10:12 a.m. Pacific time.
But there is
that's just not a thing that exists. So the relationship can't exist if half of the thing in the relationship doesn't exist.
But there is a relationship between things that I am doing. I might not be skydiving actively, but I am.
Yes, but my point is if there's so if God doesn't exist, then the relationship between us and God doesn't exist.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah. Okay. God doesn't exist.
So you can't assume that there's a relationship between us and God until you first establish that there's a God at all.
So that's what I mean I sort of built my understanding of it and kind of came from the ground up, where it was like because of my experience as an author, it kind of proved that God must exist, because it just makes sense for us to exist. Also just with a like sort of biblical context, I'm trying not to just spew off a bunch of verses to bore people with sermons, but it's like, but you have, for example, like the thing about how like in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and so it's like that is inherently referring to creation itself.
Well, sure, I understand that the Bible is a book about God, but that doesn't mean that God is a real thing. Right. In the same way that Harry Potter is a book about a guy named Harry Potter, but that doesn't mean Harry Potter is a real person. So the point is so it sounds like you said that you're an author. Cool. Proud of you for being an author. And that like you see yourself, you see an analogy, or you see a similarity or some sort of a parallel between your relationship with the book that you're writing and the depiction of God as described in the Bible and the world that we exist in.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't mean that that parallel is true, right? It doesn't, like, this is like, look, I can see a parallel between myself and my, I don't know, my struggles when I lived abroad, and you know, some, you know, I could see a parallel between that and then like the character in I don't know, some book about a fantasy world being in a new place. But that doesn't mean that the character in the fantasy world being in a new place is real, just because there's parallels.
Well, that would become from the other perspective, is if just because the characters in the fantasy world are a fiction, and then by extension, we technically are a fiction from God's perspective. That it doesn't go the other way. If the characters exist, the creator of those characters exists. Like Stan Lee, if Spider-Man exists, obviously Stan Lee exists.
No, you're okay. So you're saying you see in your experience, you have some experience with something. Yes. You have some experience with something, in this case, writing a book, and you see a parallel with your experience with a character in a book's experience, like God's experience creating the world, right? You see a parallel between your experience writing a book and this character in the book. Now, whether or not the character in the book is real is a different question, but a character in a book, you know, books, like nonfiction books, have characters in them, but so a person in a book, say, the experience of a person in a book. Now, just because your experience is similar to the experience of a person in a book doesn't mean that the person in the book is real.
No, I'm saying my experience is similar to God, and the experience of the character in the book is similar to me.
No. The character in the book is the Bible, and the character in the book is God.
No, what I'm saying is that
in my analogy, that's the analogy here. The point is your information about who God is comes from, well, it's not just the Bible, it's also like cultural context and, you know, like conversations and perhaps other readings that you've done. But the point is there is this kind of like cultural understanding of what God is, and it comes from, you know, perhaps a few different places, but there's this cultural understanding of this character, this person called God. And you see a parallel between yourself and this person, this character.
I think I figured out where the confusion is. Because you're saying, because you said something that what was it you just said? You basically said that you'd made the parallel between me being a character and the book being God.
No, the parallel is between,
being God, like the characters in the book being God.
There's a parallel in your real life. Now, in your real life, you're writing a book, and so, like, you know, you have experiences about writing a book. There's you in real life. You see a parallel between your life story and this person, this character, God. And that person, that character, God, is described in the Bible. It's also described in various philosophical texts and, you know, all these things. So just because you see a parallel between your real life and this person, this character that's written about, doesn't mean that the person, this character that's written about is real.
So yes. So that's where the confusion is, because that's not exactly what I'm saying. And I'll try to make this as clear as possible. So I'll try and like say this somewhat succinctly. So as I'll you can disagree with me in terms of like what this vocabulary word means, but I'll sort of establish something. So the firmament, right? If we were to just play with me here, and you can even just call that word fiction in terms of how I'm about to describe it, but it'll serve its purpose. Where the firmament you could imagine as being, if you look at the etymology of the word, firma is like a firm, like, barrier establishment between something, and then ment it etymologically means like mind or mental. So
I don't think that's the etymology of the word.
That if you split it up and like actually look at things, obviously people think of
that's what's it called? It's that, like, words have actual words have actual etymologies, and firmament doesn't come from firma plus ment. It's not. I did all sorts of research on that. That's literally firmament.
That's not how people necessarily use it, but that's definitely how it's built.
So no, I mean like a suffix. So the word firmament comes from Latin firmamentum, which is literally a support or a strengthening, coming from firmus, strong, steadfast, or enduring, and which comes from the Proto-Indo-European dur, to hold firmly or support. Firmus is They didn't just take firmus and then glue ment onto the end, or mentis or something, and then combine those words. That's not how the word formed.
Okay.
Because the suffix isn't ment, it's mentum.
Okay. I'll concede that. That's fair. I'll look into that. But humor me for a second, because I think, and like I said, the verb, not the verb, the word might not be correct, but so, but here's how I sort of see it. So you have God who is above, and I'll just say firmament just for ease's sake, because I don't know what other word to use. You have God who's above it, and then you have us who's below it. God is in his reality, and then you have us below that reality, and you could call that God's fiction, or as we call it, creation. And likewise, I, Jared, hello, that's my name, I am above my story world, and my characters are below my mind, separately, away from me.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I understand that. What I'm saying is just because, look, so you hear stories about God, you've culturally you've absorbed stories about God. You maybe read the Bible. You've read other things perhaps. And so what you're saying is that, like, look, I'm real, and I'm like a story. I'm like a storyteller or a story writer. And this character that I've heard about is a story writer in the story, in the things that I've heard about this character, this person. Therefore, this character, this person is real. It's false. It's assuming the consequent. It's not a true. There's not a true implication there.
But I'm not saying God exists. I'm saying that my characters exist, and that I am based, for lack of a better term.
If you're not saying God exists, then creationism is definitely false.
Wait, say that again.
If you're not saying God exists, then creationism is definitely false.
No, I'm saying that. Let's see. I'm not saying that it's literally like a cause and effect sort of situation where I, as quote unquote basically role playing as God, have created my story world, and by extension, if you zoom out, I am within this story world, and God is above us as an author.
I know, but that's assuming that this God exists at all.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's the thing in question.
Do you mind if I go into a little bit of more biblical backing, and as far as how that actually words
Sure.
it, and how
If you have other reasons why you think that God exists, by all means. Sure.
So, going back to remember when I was talking about how the consequence of or time is simply a natural consequence of things happening before and after other things?
Sure.
When the Bible says at the very beginning, like, in the beginning God created heaven and the earth. In the beginning, and picture yourself, you're Moses writing Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
You are basically saying, of all the things that have ever happened before and after other things, this is the point in time where things happened after it and nothing happened before it. So, like, that is the beginning. Now, again, God is outside of it. He has whatever his eternal thing is going on, but from God's perspective, that's the beginning, and everything is now following after that. So that's creation. If we jump
the question is not creation.
Yeah,
I agree that if God exists, then creationism perhaps is possible. Yes. If God exists in the way described by the Bible, then creationism is possible. But the question is whether or not God exists at all.
Yeah, I know. So I'm going to get to where the credibility comes from ultimately. So we have creation, where in the beginning God created heaven and the earth. That's like the first thing starting happening after other things. And then we fast forward to John. Was it John? Yes, John, where it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, a few verses later, and the Word became flesh. That is ultimately saying that to my understanding, that Jesus Christ, who was born, existed, flesh and blood, we know this, it's all documented. He lived, he died, and also and people contend this, but it's also been documented that he rose again and he made breakfast for the guys, and other people saw him. It's like he at the end of the day, he is like sort of the embodiment of creation itself. So, which I'll make this very clear, I'm not saying creation is God. I'm saying that Jesus is basically a personification of creation.
What reason do I have for thinking that God exists?
Because
Still waiting on that.
Yeah, so there are a few. Here are all the sort of credibilities that come with it. You have John says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. Okay, that connects Jesus to God. God says that he who has seen me has seen the Father. Okay, whatever. Then you have all the stuff about the only begotten Son, and then you have later Revelation where it says that the Son of Man was slain from the foundation of the world. So those are a few So
you're saying that things that are said in the Bible are reasons to believe that God exists.
I'm getting there because it comes back to it's all going to come to credibility. I'm just laying groundwork right now. So those are all sort of like framework construction on
Okay, so what's the reason for thinking that God exists? Is it things that are said in the Bible? Is it reasons from outside of the Bible? What's the reason?
I'm getting there. And I promise it'll take like 3 more sentences. So you have the Christ is being established or being acknowledged as being or we'll say this much, that he's claiming to be God.
Mm-hmm.
Then sentence 2, he does a bunch of miracles, and the purpose of miracles in the Bible isn't to say like, hey, look at me, I'm doing miracles. Miracles are to validate the person claiming to be God. And also another way you could think of miracles when he does them. For example, the fig tree, when he walks up to it and he says, "Oh, this fig tree's out of season, curse you," and he goes off, and when he comes back, the fig tree's dead.
So the reason is the second sentence is miracles.
Miracles as a sort of credibility vessel for.
Okay.
So you can think of it.
What's the next one? Continue,
please.
So
The miracles is the credibility vessel, and then after he says all that stuff, when he's claiming to be miracles, claiming to be God, all this, when he dies, now and that leaves us with the ultimate question of, okay, is he actually God? When he resurrects, which is documented, that basically makes that proof. That if he's claiming to be God, and if he's claiming that he was raised from the dead, and by reason of fulfilling the law and living a sinless life, the fact that he resurrected then proves, okay, that he is God, which by extension leads back to, okay, God exists.
Okay, so I was right. The evidence was, or the reason to believe in God is because of things it says in the Bible.
To say it's because of things that the Bible says is a little disingenuous, because the Bible, first of all, is a collection of 66 different books.
It's a collection of 66 different books. Yeah, and
it's not just one thing that some dude wrote.
I never said that. But the Bible is a corpus, and so like I could say that the reason to think that the Titanic existed is because of things it says in the encyclopedia, and that's a good reason, right?
Yeah.
Even though encyclopedias are not one book and they're not written by one person, it doesn't mean it's not any less true to say that the reason to believe in the Titanic is because of the things it says in the encyclopedia. The thing is I don't believe what it says in the Bible. If I did believe what it said in the Bible, I would already be a Christian. So why should I believe what it says in the Bible about God when, like, clearly I already don't believe that. If I did believe it, I would already be a Christian.
So that is kind of where it comes ultimately to faith. And I'll also just lay out just real quick what the faith is actually being put into. So we have Jesus's miracles as sort of his evidence, and you could
which I don't think happened.
And that's fine if you want to think that, but it's documented nonetheless. And you could think of it in terms of the difference between someone who's arrogant and someone who's confident. if I say like, oh, I can race down the highway and never crash. If I race down the highway and don't do it, and like I just crash and die, and it's like, okay, I'm discredible. But if I actually do it, that's not arrogance. That's just being confident in me knowing what I'm talking about. So that's the purpose of miracles, is for someone to say, I'm God, here's evidence.
Right, but I don't think that the miracles happened.
And that just ultimately comes down to what you actually believe in. But then,
why should, like, what is the good like, okay, look, in everyday life, miracles don't happen. So like, we should have good reason, just with, you know, without considering anything else, we should have good reason to think that miracles are not the kind of thing that are likely to happen. And so if somebody is claiming that miracles happened in some scenario, whether it's in a book or whether they're telling you a story or whatever it is, you have very good reason to doubt them.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it is fair to say that miracles don't, because I do agree with you to the point where it's like, because I hear people who will say like, oh, like this thing happened, it was a miracle, and like they'll describe it as a miracle, but it was actually something that's like explainable. I personally think of miracles as literally writing things into the fabric of reality. For example, when Jesus told the fig tree to die, when he raised
Sure, but my point is we have good reason to think that that's made up, that that's not a real thing that happened.
Yeah, but that just comes that does ultimately just come down to an act of free will on whether or not you're gonna believe what the
so it's just like a choice to believe it. There's not really a reason to believe it.
It's a choice. It's a choice no different than if you're reading a history book. Like fundamentally, it's no different than if you're reading a history book and you choosing to believe that the writer.
Oh, it's very fundamentally different, because the historical method, you know, historically, is actually fairly reliable at producing true conclusions about the past.
No, but it is the same, because and to some other people who in the comments who are saying like God didn't write the Bible. You're correct. He didn't write the Bible. People wrote the Bible inspired through God. So, and by extension,
look, the historical method is not just people writing stuff down. There is a method to doing history to produce reliable accounts, right? The Bible's not an example of that.
Of course it is. People prove stuff in the Bible.
No, it's not.
People have found old empires and kings.
The Bible is not a historical work. It's not like a work of history, right?
It inherently is. All the old documents.
No. It's a work of, you know, in some cases prophecy, or in some cases poetry, or in some cases metaphor, in some cases biography, that are framed in a historical setting. That doesn't mean that the book uses the historical method to come to the conclusions that it comes to. So the reason we have for trusting history books is because they use an effective method. The Bible doesn't use that method.
So can you give me a quick, I don't expect like a full like on definition or like outline of what the historical method is, but can you just give me an example on like what the historical method looks like?
The historical method it's similar to the scientific method, but for history, where the only data points you have available are going to be data points like archaeology and written texts. And so what you can do is you take say written texts, for example, and you try to understand, given the context of the surrounding areas and given the context of the time it was written in, and other works that we have access to that are perhaps unrelated. You try to understand what the intentions of the authors were, because once you know the intentions of the author, you can filter those out to get an accurate reading of the history. So, like, for example, if you were to go look at some historical or some like ancient accounting of like a battle. Right? If in surrounding literature you found documents saying that there were 10 million soldiers facing off against 400 soldiers and the 10 million soldiers were defeated, and this is like some separate text, and you have archaeological reason to think that there was never a battle that involved 10 million soldiers against 400 soldiers, because you've looked in the place that it says it happened and you didn't find anything, so you have reason to think that there was never a battle between 10 million and 400. But your ancient text from around the same time period says that there were 500,000 against 30. Well, because you have other texts that are equally or that are unreliable in a specific way, you can filter out that unreliability from the 500,000 verse 30 text, and you can come to a more accurate conclusion about what was actually happening, even though the text isn't accurately representing it. That's the kind of thing that you can do with history. So like
Yeah.
you critically examine the texts and the context that's available, you examine the available archaeological evidence, and you come to conclusions trying to filter out the understanding and the intentions of the authors that were writing to try to come to objective conclusions about what actually happened. The Bible doesn't do any of that.
It does some of that. And so
No, in fact, historically, this wasn't even a thing that was done for like more than 1,000 years after the Bible was written.
Oh, no, 100 does it. In Second Peter and in I can't remember the exact verse off the top of my head, but I know in Second Peter and in Proverbs, Second Peter is basically referring to a verse in Proverbs, in like verbatim. And then you have another example in Ruth, which I disagree in terms of like how the Book of Enoch is.
So
not
so
included
where was the
personally.
critical assessment of like the context available at the time to try to tease apart objective reality from the intentions of the author? Where can that be found in the Bible?
Oh, wait, sorry, say that again.
Where can you find examples of the author of the Bible, because the claim is that the author of the Bible is as reliable as a historical text? Where can you find claims, or where can you find examples of the author of the Bible, say the author of the New Testament, trying to separate the intention of the author of some older text from the objective history of what actually happened that the older text is partially describing? Where do you find examples of that?
I see what you mean. So there is one example that I know of where when you look at, I think you're probably familiar with this first example where you probably heard about how when Moses parted the Red Sea, Israelites went across, and then now people are like, oh, they're like Egyptian chariot wheels under the Red Sea. It was kind of crazy. You probably heard that before.
Yep.
Except
it's not true that there's chariots found at the bottom of the Red Sea, by the way.
Okay, and so, but there is another piece of information which is very interesting, where, which to my knowledge is true and documented, where if you look at Egyptian sort of like logs of like what they were doing around that, seemingly around that era, what you find is that and so for initial context, just as a summary, Israelites, they're enslaved in Egypt. Moses comes over, says, let my people go. They head out, they go through the Red Sea, and then they wander around for 40 years. That's the summary of the Egyptian story. Now, if you go over to Egypt, fairly recent, I think this was like in the 80s, where they were looking through Egyptian documents, and they found that seemingly around when that time period would have been, the Egyptians lost a bunch of people to where they needed to get more manpower because they basically just lost their entire workforce, and you see that all throughout like the Canaan area, they're trying to recall all these people from these different outposts to get back to Egypt, and they're also making these desperate deals with other people because now they're having to try and survive and keep the empire going because all their workforce is left.
Which time period was this?
I think it's supposedly around like 2500, 2028, somewhere around there.
There's essentially two time periods that are contradictory in the Bible about when the Exodus happened. They're different by like 400 years.
Yeah.
So like it's actually like the Bible must be wrong in at least one way about when the Exodus happened.
Well, I think that can also be attributed to how you interpret some things. And I'm not trying to be nitpicky about like, oh, the interpretation. It's like I think it could. It's like how you look at prophecy, where like if, for example, like if you were to look at like, oh, like this thing must be happening around this era, like that it could just be an error in calculation. But that is still a thing where no matter when the time period was, and again, it's close, and for all practical purposes, and it's close enough to whenever that era was, even if it's a margin of error of 500 years, it's far enough in the past where it's like you can kind of forgive it a little bit, where it's like,
but it's like clearly not reliable, and in fact,
there is evidence of there having been a massive exodus of people.
Oh no, there's not.
And then Egypt having to recall all these people from these outposts, and that process would have taken about 30 to 40 years. So basically,
what's the source for this? Because as far as I know, there is no evidence of a massive exodus from Egypt of Hebrews or Israelites or whatever.
I'll try and find one. I'll take a screenshot of your Discord.
Okay.
I might be able to. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But if it'll screenshot, there you go. But like but to my knowledge and what I've seen is like there's evidence of that basically that people and outposts throughout like Canaan and neighboring areas, that they were all being recalled. And then what that basically sums up to is that the Israelites, if they had just gone straight into the promised land, they would have been annihilated because that whole place was distraught. So the fact that they were in the wilderness for 40 years, that was...
There's no evidence that
an
anybody
act
was
of time.
wandering the desert for 40 years. 2 million people wandering around. It's a fairly small area, the Sinai Peninsula. 2 million people wandering around for 40 years in the Sinai Peninsula would have left behind evidence. Left behind, animal bones. Would have left behind, the...
Not necessarily, because the Bible...
They would have left behind, tents, or not tents, the remnants of tents, the remnants of like these kinds of things that would have been built for shelter. Like,
no, tents would have withered away by now.
No, but like the remnants of these things, like we have picked up, like we know when people have been in a place for like 40,000 years ago. We can tell when people have been there just by looking at like the kinds of things that exist in that area. 2 million people wandering around for 40 years. That's like that would have been a bigger population than like existed in Rome at the time.
Yeah. Well, maybe about the
40
same,
years
but yeah.
wandering around. They would have left behind, like humans leave behind so much trash. Like we would have seen it.
Well, you have a couple
broken
of things
pots,
to account for
any of this stuff.
Where the Bible does say that God provided them with daily bread, with rain.
Right.
And
So
manna.
the explanation for why we don't see any evidence of them is magic.
But you have to couple that with the other thing I was just mentioning a second ago, where they had to, and that 40-year thing wasn't just an idol just wandering around for 40 years for 40 years' sake. Like it was, or even if you wanted to chalk it up to prophetic, like, oh, the number 40, like that's everywhere. Like it's literally, that is the amount of time it would have taken using Egyptian documents that it would have taken for all these.
I don't think that these Egyptian documents exist, by the way.
To bring, and I'll try and find it and send it to you. But for all these people to be brought back in to eat toward Egypt, and so that when the Israelites went to the Promised Land, it was basically just free reign, and they could just claim it without a problem. Because if they did go in too soon, it would have been.
But they didn't just go in and claim it. They fought a bunch of people, at least according to the story.
Afterward, they didn't.
No, in the Promised Land, like they fought the Canaanites
when they got to the Promised Land, yeah, but not before they got there.
I mean, like they fought the Amalekites, or rather, they were raided by the Amalekites on the way there.
Not on the way. That was after.
No, that was right after the Exodus, but before they entered the Promised Land.
No, I just studied this. Like, we're looking at this on Wednesday night and study like that. And the Amalekite stuff didn't happen until after they got settled in.
One sec, we'll pull it up. Pulling up International Christian Embassy as a source. The Spirit. Okay, so this, that this is a Christian source, right? So this is not like some atheist source or whatever. Okay. Yeah. The spirit of Amalek is the oldest enemy of Israel. The Amalekites were the first people to attack Israel when they left Egypt for the Promised Land. So they attacked them when they left Egypt for the Promised Land. Now, the thing that you're talking about is when the Israelites went and like annihilated the Amalekites. That was 400 years later. But the Amalekites attacked the Israelites right after they left Egypt, which is why, at least that's the story. The story that's why God says this is why you should go and you should genocide them, because the Amalekites attacked you just as you were leaving Egypt.
Okay. Does it happen to say which chapter that was?
It's in Exodus. It's in Exodus 17.
17.
Yeah. So like, which is the chapter where they're actually not. Like it's like right after they, leave.
Okay, so yeah, I see that. Okay, yeah, so that was there.
But this is all to say, like we kind of got off a beaten track here. The point is that if it were the case that the authors of, say, the New Testament were doing we're doing the historical method, we're like trying to like objectively represent what actually happened, they would have noticed that there's a conflict between the time when the Exodus is said to have happened in, I think it's in there's a description of a thing. I think it's in Exodus actually, And the it's an Exodus. It's Exodus 1:11. The time when the Exodus happened, and according to Exodus, and the time when the Exodus happened according to 1 Kings. They would have noticed, there's this weird conflict here. Let's try to tease out what's actually true. But they didn't do that because they weren't doing the historical method.
And that's fair. And you could, and again, and this isn't meant to, I mean, it'll sound like a cop out, and I'll admit that it can be sort of seen as a cop out to like toward mystery or whatever, where it's like maybe they just weren't thinking ahead to
It's
like,
because they
oh, let's
weren't doing
clarify this stuff.
history. They weren't trying to be historians.
Well, well, there's also, because to be fair, and again, and it's like, I don't know what exactly like and I don't assume they're dumb per se. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, they're just a bunch of Neanderthals or whatever. So like, I still will hold them to the same standard you are, but there is still a level of mayhaps they just didn't. Because also think about how the medium of documenting things wasn't exactly like, you don't just have infinite Word documents. You can have like they're limited on materials and being able to write stuff, so they do kind of have to write like a little etch mark and say that means a whole history bit, and just like,
So look,
like,
this conversation started.
Yeah.
This conversation started. This part of the conversation started because you said that believing in the Bible is just as good as believing in history, and my contention is that that's obviously not true, for reasons that have now shown that like they weren't doing like the historical method to try to figure out what's objectively true. And secondly, the Bible is not the kind of thing that you can update, whereas using the historical method you can update prior understandings of history to come to better conclusions, more accurate conclusions. But if you can't update them, then there's nothing that you can do. Then like it just can't be a part of history if it can't be changed, if it can't be modified given new evidence. So like, no, it's just not the case that believing in the Bible is the same as believing what you read in a history book. One is far more reliable.
Well, I think part of that, because there are two things. I do agree with you in terms of like being able to update and like keep things up to date. Like I agree with you on that. But the other thing you do have to consider is that the Bible isn't meant to be an updated document. It's meant to just be a collection of original documents.
Right. So it's not a history book. It shouldn't be believed as a history book.
But well, it should be seen as history evidence.
So what you can do is you can treat it as a primary source, and then you can analyze that primary source using the historical method in the same way that you would analyze any other primary source. But when you do that, the conclusion that you come to is that like a lot of this stuff is made up and didn't happen.
Yes and no. I think a good chunk of it did happen. And I will say that there are plenty of things like say like the Book of Job. I do think that might have been just straight up parable. The Book of Genesis. I think the Genesis.
But like the Exodus didn't happen, for example.
I think there's enough evidence to say that the Exodus did happen, but I will concede that there are things in the Bible that are like, okay, that's serving a purpose. But
if the Exodus happened, then either either Kings gets it wrong or Exodus gets it wrong.
Yeah. So
because they would have happened like 200 years apart from one another.
Which can consider this is that 200 years is enough time for things to get kind of wonky, because you have even if you look at modern history, things from 200 years ago easily gets lost as far as how people actually understand anything. So even just by 200 years, like
no, the point is that so First Kings chapter 6, First Kings chapter 6 suggests that the Exodus happened something like, I think it's like 480 years or something like 480 years before Solomon's temple, right? There's a 480 year period between Solomon's temple, or between the Exodus and Solomon's temple. Now we know when Solomon's temple would have been built. It would have been built something like 950 BC or something like this. We know that from like archaeological evidence. And so that puts the Exodus, according to First Kings, as something like 1400 BC, 1450 BC, something like that. However, in Exodus, it specifically states, so that's when the Exodus happens. That's when the Israelites, that's when the Hebrews left Egypt, right? But in Exodus 1, it specifically talks about the Hebrew slaves building these storehouses for Ramses. And we know when those were built, because those are real things. Those were built in like 1250 BC. 200 years later, 200 years after they supposedly already left. So how could they have built something if they had already left Egypt?
Could be worldly corruption. Could just be that the Egyptians didn't want to have any record of the Israelites being there. That's perfectly
But this
possible.
this isn't an Egyptian record. This is a Hebrew record.
Well, the fact that they contradict is my point.
It's not that it's
Hebrew-
not the
'cause Hebrew said
Egyptian
one
records
thing.
that. No, we have independent dating mechanisms to figure out when these storage sites were built under Ramses, right? We have independent archaeological reason to think that these were built in like 1250 BC or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
And we have independent archaeological reasons to think that that Solomon's temple was built like around 1000 BC, maybe 950 BC or something like this. And so 480 years before that, according to Kings, would have been before 480 years before that is when the Exodus supposedly happened, when the Hebrews left Egypt. 480 years before that would have been before Ramses was even born, let alone Ramses' storehouses were built.
I've seen a discrepancy like this before. I'd have to look at it, look at the sources you're talking about to sort of analyze it. But there is a thing where, what was the other situation? There is another situation. I was watching a video on prophecy regarding the end times, and that's not end times isn't particularly relevant. But there was a thing in there where there are these two. There were two sieges that were supposedly supposed to happen before and after each other, respectively. But the documentation of them, when you look in the Bible, makes it appear as if like one is supposed to happen. Basically, one is supposed to happen after a certain period, and another one's supposed to happen before a different period. But the text makes it looks like the exact opposite. And the reason for that was because the original Hebrew writing, or maybe it wasn't Hebrew, but whatever the original language was that those things were documented, we read in English from right to left, up and down. But in that language, it goes backwards. So when you're reading it in the backwards order that they would have originally written it. So when you actually read it basically backwards, it actually follows.
So we read Hebrew from right to left, and we read English from left to right, and we know how to read Hebrew.
Yeah.
There are people who Hebrew is their first language.
So when you look in the Bible, which is in English, if people
the Bible's not in English; it's in Hebrew.
Well, and like I said, I'm not saying that people haven't gone this deep, but I'm saying this is possible. That
it's the thing that I'm offering you is not a result of reading an English translation. You can just go look at the Hebrew directly.
Well, I'm saying that the order of events. I'm not saying that whether the events exist at all. I'm saying that the actual order that it's documented. If it
this isn't an order of events issue. This is one book says it was 400 years before this thing happened, 480 years before that thing, and then the other one says that they were still there when this thing happened, and those two events actually conflict in real life, not just like some textual confliction. It's not a textual conflict. It's a real life conflict between the order of events that actually happened.
Okay, that's fair. I don't know enough about that. I'll concede that for now.
It's something worth looking into. Casimir, you've been on for almost an hour, so I'm going to let you go. But thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate you. You've been very chill, and I think that's a good thing. Take care.
Yeah, you too.
All right, let's read some super chats if there are any. All right, let's see. We have $2 from Mike Angel with if Jesus is hosting brunch, he better serve pork. I think that Jesus probably kept kosher, right? And $2 from Zero Jin $2 from Zero Jin. Troy was destroyed. Greek gods must be real too. True. That's a good point. In fact, I think that's actually a perfect argument. I think I'm a Hellenistic pagan now. And let's just double check. And that's all we got. Which, I appreciate you guys. All right, let's bring up another guest. Louis Santana has been waiting for a very long time and has been very patient. Louis, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Glad to hear it. Louis, do you believe in God? Or, sorry, that's the wrong topic. Do you think that the world was created?
Yeah, I believe the world was created by Hashem.
Okay. Why should I think that?
Well, you're small. Your mind is not big enough. It doesn't understand much enough to understand the bounds that a God like Hashem, who knows no bounds, can understand. He's omnipotent, omnipresent. I don't believe that Jesus was God, and so you cannot convince me otherwise because
You know, I'll have you
you're
know,
you're
I have an
small
enormous
brained.
head. My head is quite large, actually, which is why hats don't fit me very well. So I'll have you
And
know, my brain is very big.
and your brain is big because Hashem allowed for your brain to be big.
Okay, why should I
But
think
your
that Hashem
brain,
exists?
but your brain is not enough to. All right, so let me ask you this, right?
Please.
Can you imagine in your head a sixth dimensional object?
Yeah, I do it all the time. It's actually part of my job.
You cannot imagine draw a
Oh,
sixth
are we? Well,
dimensional
I can't draw
object.
it. I can't draw it because drawings are two-dimensional.
Exactly. So
That doesn't
since
mean I
you
can't
cannot,
imagine it.
no, since you cannot draw a six-dimensional object, is it safe to say that it's like the cat in the box? If I don't open the box, that means that I don't know if the cat is under the box or not. Since you cannot draw a six-dimensional object, it's safe to say that you don't know what a six-dimensional object
No,
looks like.
I think
So
your
you
mind is just
cannot
not big
refute
enough.
God.
You just don't have a big enough brain because you can't imagine a six-dimensional shape, but I can.
No, but I can imagine Hashem. So I have a bigger brain
Okay,
than
so
you.
okay. So why should I think that Hashem exists?
So let me ask you this. Do you
You're
think
not going
that
to give me a reason, are you?
do you think no, I'm gonna give you a reason.
Okay.
Do you think
Reasons
that,
usually don't start with questions, but go ahead.
yeah, but do you think that we came from monkeys and a loud explosion came and then you just happened to accidentally come here because the earth heated up and cooled down? Is that what you believe?
Are you trying to say the Big Bang and abiogenesis and evolution? Is that what you're trying to summarize?
Yeah, like the
Okay,
monkey
yeah.
stuff.
I think that all of those things are right. I think that the way that you described it was
Oh,
like batshit crazy.
wow. So it sounds batshit crazy when someone really breaks it down. I'm glad
Oh,
you
well,
guys
wait.
are
Do you
all
think that
hearing this.
do you think that the Big Bang was loud?
I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know
Do you
because
think
it
that
didn't
scientists
happen.
think the Big Bang is loud?
The scientists that studied that don't know what they're talking about
So then why'd you call it loud?
because they said it was a bang, and the only way I
Do you
could
think that it
imagine a
actually do you
bang.
think that it was an explosion?
I mean, a bang is like what is the definition of the word bang? Why would they use that
It's a
onomatopoeia?
name. It's a name,
Yeah,
not a
yes,
description.
yes, but bang is always used as to an explosion. It is.
Yeah,
It's always used.
that's not what your mom said when I banged your mom last night. Like, no,
All
bang is
right.
not always used to describe explosions.
Well,
Also, got him.
well, why you got?
Sorry, I
All
just
right,
had to. It was,
so
I had an opportunity. Okay.
okay, fine. You can talk about mothers. All right, listen. Let's say this, right? Because I'm currently destroying you in this debate.
I'm sure that that's
Let's
what's
say
happening. You don't even know what the Big Bang is, but okay.
no, I know what the Big Bang is, but
Okay,
let me
if you think
explain
the
to
Big
you
Bang was an
something.
explosion, then you don't know what it is.
Let me explain to you something, brother. Look, when Hashem created the world, this is how you came about from Adam and Eve. All right? You didn't
Yeah.
you didn't come from me banging your mom or your dad you banging your mom. You came
you
from
sure?
Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wait a
So
minute. So wait, did Eve give birth to me?
she is the reason why she's all our mother.
Wait a minute. So then who's my mom?
All our mothers is Eve,
Wait, so who's
basically.
my mom? Who's like
Yeah.
the woman that like, raised me until I was 18?
The lady that I slept with 27 years ago.
I'm 33, so like, I mean, but I'm glad
I've
that my
been
mom is
33
getting
years
some.
ago.
I'm glad that my mom is
But
getting
anyways,
some.
all right,
But like,
all
who
right.
is
So
she? Like,
all right,
what's her
I'll
relationship to
answer your
me?
question. Your mom is a descendant of Eve. That's what your
Right.
mom
But
is.
so she is my mom though. She is my mother. You there? Did you like unplug your computer because you were getting annihilated? Or your phone? Like what's
Oh, sorry, I got a call.
Okay, you're
Sorry,
good.
can
You're
you
good.
repeat that?
Yeah, so who is my mom? Is my mom my mother?
Yes, she's your mother.
Okay. And Eve is also my mother?
Yes.
Okay, so someone can have two moms. Based ally, based lesbian ally. I love this for you.
Yeah. Yes. Someone can
Cool.
have two moms. Someone
Let's
can have two
go.
moms in two instances. They can have two moms if both of them are gay, and they can have two moms as far as.
Based.
So if it's a gay couple, then that means they have three moms because Eve would also be their mother.
Based poly ally. Let's go.
Yeah. So let me tell you this though. All jokes aside, I really pray for you, brother, because look, the Torah is the truth. Okay, I know you guys think you're smart, and you guys think that you can just outsmart God and have all these things that is going on. You're attached to this earth too much. There's more to this world than just this earthly realm.
Okay,
You know?
can you tell me what the 5 books of Moses are? What are the names? In order, please.
In order, the 5 books of Moses are it's the Torah, right?
Yes.
Well, it's just the Torah.
Okay, it's split up into 5 books.
Um,
So what are the names? You can say them in Hebrew if you know them.
the 5 books of Moses. I would have to look it. I would have to look it up.
How do you not know this?
Wait, can you jog my memory?
The first one's Genesis.
Okay, Genesis.
What's next?
It's after Genesis. Oh wait, in order.
Ideally, yeah.
Hold on.
Bro's just LARPing. Bro doesn't know anything about the Torah.
Wait, Leviticus.
And that's not the next one.
All right, so Genesis. I know there's Leviticus. There's Numbers.
Mm-hmm. Also not the next one.
Well, I can't say it in order. Okay, Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers. There's one that starts with an M. Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers. Damn. Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers. Exodus.
There you go. That's one of them.
And Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Exodus, and
Chat, you're helping him.
Yeah, I don't know the last one.
Deuteronomy.
Okay.
What do you mean? What do you mean that you're a believer in the Torah and you don't even know the names of the 5 books in English or in Hebrew? Do you know the name of any of the books in Hebrew?
No.
Okay. Can you read Hebrew?
Yes, I can read Hebrew.
Okay. Do you know what the first word of Genesis is in Hebrew?
I would have to pull it up. 1 second.
Okay. I'll pull it up for you and you can see it on my screen. Okay. And then I want you to read it for me. Here we go. All right. Let me make it a little bit smaller so that you can see the entire first verse. Okay, can you read the first first word for me?
Okay. Para Breshit bara Elohim.
That's 3 words, but good job. It's Elohim, but that's close. What about the next words?
Shit. I'm gonna be honest, you stumped me.
Et Hashemayim ve'et haaretz. Is the next 3 words.
Wait. So
words.
you're Jewish. Wait, you're Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why would you leave the truth? Why would you leave the?
Because it's obviously nonsense.
So you were blessed to be Jewish, and you switched up on the religion, brother.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's true.
Why not?
Because it's obviously nonsense.
It's not nonsense, though. It's the truth.
Explain to me who did Adam and Eve's children marry?
So you clearly know more about the Torah than I do, yet somehow
apparently.
So somehow Satan has gotten to you, and now it's playing a trick on your brain. and you're
if
confused.
if you're a God believer of the Hebrew God, Satan is not the enemy.
No, yeah, I know he's not the enemy.
Satan
He's
is
just-
not the devil.
Yeah,
He's
I
not a
know,
deceiver.
Yeah, I know he's not like the enemy or the deceiver. He's more of just like a prosecutor. I know. But at the end of the day, it's more so like you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Like
It sounds like you're a cultural Christian who thinks that like the Hebrew Bible is cooler or something.
No. I'm not a cultural Christian. So believe it or not, I actually come from an Islamic family, but I learned that the truth was the Torah, so I don't support that.
Okay,
anymore.
that's true, because in Islam they also have shaitan, so like that's also that belief could have also been influenced that way. But like, look, like we can just talk about the Torah. Do you think that who do you think that Adam and Eve's children married?
I believe that they married. So their genetic coding. And so I'm going to get into a different thing that's outside of the Torah right now. I believe that Adam and Eve were so complete as human beings that their genetic coding was so complex and perfect that their kids marrying each other was not incest, because kids.
But who are the children of Adam and Eve?
The children of Adam and Eve, I believe, were was it Esau or something like that?
No, it's Cain and Abel, if I remember correctly.
Cain and Abel.
Right.
Yeah.
So Cain kills Abel, right? That's in the story. It's this part.
Yeah. I know that Cain kills Abel.
Cain kills Abel. Then Cain runs away. He's exiled, and he's really upset because who's going to marry him if he's cursed? But he does get married in the land of Nod. So who'd he marry if Adam and Eve were the only people?
No, like they in the book of Enoch, it says that there were other people.
Okay, so then
so like in distant lands, I think.
So
like
did God not create those people?
So God created those people, but I think it was an allegory. Like, so I believe the Garden of Eden was like perfect, and maybe like the other place wasn't perfect. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, you stumped me there. Like, I don't know how the hell they had kids.
And like, if they weren't the children of Eve, why would they be cursed? Right? So like, the reason why women have painful pregnancies, this is explained in the Garden of Eden story. Eve eats from the tree of knowledge. Adam does too. They get exiled, and then God says, what is it that he says? He says something like, I'm just pulling it up here. By the way, Genesis 3 verse 20 says, the man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. So like, I don't know, how could she be the mother of all living if there's other people that she didn't give birth to? Anyway, so I think it's in Genesis. Is it in Genesis 4? No, it's Genesis 3 where sorry, I'm just looking for that. Because thou hast done this, cursed art thou from among all cattle. This is regarding the curse to the serpent, and from among all beasts of the field, upon thy belly thou shalt go, and dust thou shalt eat all the days of thy life. So the snake is cursed to walk around on the ground, to slither on the ground, blah 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 blah. And then with regards to women, God says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy pain and thy travail. In pain thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee. So this is saying childbirth is painful for you because you ate from the tree of knowledge. And this curse is genetic, right? This curse is passed down by Eve's line, right? But if there were other women, for example, the woman that Cain married, who are not from Eve's line, why would their childbirth be painful?
Because like, since Hashem really, makes no mistakes, it's because they were also, in a sense, Eve had also doomed them.
How?
If that's the case, because Hashem wanted the responsibility to be on Adam and Eve, but the responsibility was supposed to be like not selfish, but because we are selfish in our nature and humans think we know
Oh, we
everything,
are?
everyone in the comments thinks they know everything. They're just chatting from the sidelines. In the reality, Hashem knows everything. You're sitting here,
But why would Hashem curse these random women who had nothing to do with Eve? They weren't even Eve's daughters.
because mankind as a whole, we are one, right? Even though we are different, we are one. That's like the whole purpose why Hashem is saying the Messiah is gonna come back, and Israel is gonna become greater Israel, and it's gonna
Oh,
trigger
cringe. No, Greater Israel is cringe, by the way.
no, but it's gonna trigger the Messiah to come back, because the purpose of Israel is to bring the world under one, is to bring back the world under one world peace, because Jesus Christ, or whoever the Christians worship, didn't bring it. Muhammad didn't bring it. They're not the messiahs. So the Messiah is gonna be under Judaism, and
Well, that's the claim. That's the Jewish claim. Yeah, but like,
world peace.
it seems like there's like a contradiction and flaw after contradiction and flaw to be found in the Torah, which is one of the reasons why I think it's obviously nonsense. Like, these are obviously stories told by people who lived 3,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago, and they were trying to explain the world as they understood it, and obviously they were wrong.
They weren't wrong, because what they said is going to happen. They said that it was going to be like a big war and stuff like that. So isn't that kind of in the works right now?
No, there's been big wars forever. What do you like? This is not a detailed or interesting prediction.
Yeah, but not a war for Israel.
There have literally been like 5 wars involving Israel,
but they weren't like big. And also, I want to be real, right? Let's be
they
real
weren't
here.
Big, okay.
No, but let's be real here. I don't want anyone to act like they don't see what's going on in the world right now. The rise of anti-Semitism, the rise of online, just a lot of divisiveness. These are all things that were predicted, and they're happening right now.
So anti-Semitism, it's a real problem, and as a person who's obviously Jewish, you can just see my side profile. As a person who's obviously Jewish, like, I receive it a lot, actually. And it's obviously a problem, but it's been a problem for like 2,000 years. And in fact, if you wanted to look for a time period where anti-Semitism was a bigger problem and when there was a bigger war, you only have to go 80 years ago, when about 1/3 of the world's Jewish population was killed, and there was literally not the largest war in human history, but the largest war in like the last 1,000 years or something like this. That would be, if you were going to point to any time, it would have been then, but the Messiah didn't come.
The Messiah didn't come because because the Jews were being targeted in Germany, and right now they're in Israel. So what's gonna happen is all the Jews are gonna return to Israel, right? Most of them, even you, and you
Hopefully
don't even
not.
know this. You don't know this yet, but you are. You're gonna return to Israel. I'm gonna go to Israel, and we're all just gonna come back as well, and we're gonna spread through the world. So
Do not come.
all right, come on, guys. All right, so pretty much you have to understand, right? The reason why I believe God exists is because think about the impressions of mankind. What are the impressions of mankind in the world? We have buildings, we have technology, we irrigated, we have deep water.
By the way, did you convert? Did you convert to Judaism?
No, I followed the Noahide laws, and I got denied by a rabbi to convert to Judaism.
So first of all, based for being like, yeah, you're not Jewish, you just believe in Hashem and you follow the Noahide laws. Cool, I appreciate the consistency. I just want to give you a hint. You do know that like they're supposed to deny you a few times, right?
Yeah, they told me that I get denied a few times. I was supposed to go back and do my so my best friend is Jewish, and he already we're doing the process, but I have to go do National Guard duty, so I can't do the
You're gonna do it
process
afterwards
yet.
Sure. Okay, I get that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it after. Yeah.
Okay, well, hey, look, man. Like, I mean, so first of all, one of the lovely things about Judaism, and I'm sure you know because you've probably looked into this, is that it's not dogmatic. in the sense that your membership with the Jewish community is not predicated on whether or not you adhere to certain dogmas, right? And the best example of this, perhaps, is the Oven of Achnai story. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Okay, so the Oven of Achnai story is it's from one of the Talmuds, and I just want to make sure that I get the names right. So I'm going to pull up the okay. So anyway, the story is something like one rabbi is disagreeing with a bunch of other rabbis about some stuff, and they're going back and forth, and at some point the disagreement gets so fierce, and I'm probably butchering the story, but this is the gist of it. The disagreement gets so fierce that God decides to intervene, and God tells Rabbi Eliezer, the one guy who's disagreeing with a lot of the other guys, he says, look, they got it right, they have the correct interpretation. And then Rabbi Eliezer is like, look, sorry, you gave us the Torah, your story's done here. It's our job to do the interpretation, not yours. So this is an example of a rabbi, a famous rabbi. This is Rabbi Eliezer saying, "No, God, you're wrong. My interpretation's right." So like this is like a great example of how you can be Jewish without believing a dogma. And so like, look, kudos to you for wanting to commit to being part of the Jewish tribe, if you will. But you don't. There's nothing wrong with not believing it. You can still be Jewish and not believe it. And I think that given the data that we have about the world around us, I think that you have totally good reasons to not believe it.
That's interesting. Wait, where is this written that you just?
This is in Bava Metzia 59A and B.
Oh, okay.
It was
Right.
It's one of the Talmudic stories. It's a pretty famous one. In fact, there's a Wikipedia article about it.
Yeah, I definitely need to do more research. I will say that I'll concede on this one because the next time I come up, I will have more scripture, more Torah scripture, because I know I can defeat you. I know I can beat you with the Torah because the Torah is the truth and the Torah is God's word. I want to let the chat know the Torah is
Well, that's what they
God's
say.
word. And everything that's in the Torah is what's going to come true. And you guys who think that otherwise, you're in when the Messiah comes back and all the prophecies are fulfilled.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It wasn't Rabbi Eliezer. It was Rabbi Joshua. I was just reading wrong. Rabbi Eliezer was one of the ones that were that Rabbi Joshua was arguing against. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, yeah. So go do some reading. I think you'll find that, like, more power to you if you want to believe. But I think that you'll find that the kinds of things that you have to believe in to believe that the Torah is literally true conflict with like reality.
No, it doesn't conflict with reality. It's just we don't understand like the way Hashem works, because Hashem is like not he doesn't have arms and legs, he doesn't have a brain, he's a creator.
But he does have a
He's
face, interestingly
He's an
enough.
infinite creator. He doesn't have a face.
Sure he does.
All right, show me
Moses
a scripture
sees
that-
it. One second, let me pull it up. I think it's Moses. It's either Moses or yeah. It's Exodus 33. Let me pull it up.
So maybe it's
Exodus
just like
33:11.
maybe it's what Moses imagined was Hashem's face, but not actually like Hashem's face. Because
Okay,
sometimes
so verse 11 is the relevant part. And the Lord spoke unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend.
yeah, but that's not necessarily like a face. I get why you would think that means that he has a face, but it's more so like, all right, if the Lord showed himself to you face to face, right? You could be imagining, like, you could be going
But it
through
uses,
like
it uses the
DMT
same
check.
word, panim, for face.
Yeah, but you got to think about it like this, right? So let me give you an example, right? When you're on a DMT trip, right? I've
Oh,
never
no.
done DMT.
Okay,
I've
good.
never done. Yeah, I've never done that. But
Don't do
when
drugs,
you're on
okay?
yeah, like when you, let's say you're on a DMT trip and you start seeing those colors and like the whirly squirrelies. I don't know what they see when they do it, but like let's say that's what Hashem's face looks like. That's not a face. It's something you can't even imagine. Like it's like an abstract thing. That's probably what Moses was seeing.
Okay. Well, I mean, then it's just not the case that God saw, or that Moses saw God face to face. That Moses spoke to God face to face, rather.
Yeah, but that's face
Even
to face.
though that's literally the words that it uses.
Yeah, but it's.
I mean, it could be a metaphor.
figuratively.
It could be a metaphor, but
Yeah.
at least historically, like we have, I'm pretty sure that there's even like a drawing of Hashem and Asherah, right? This is like an 8th century BC drawing from, you know, that area of the world, and you can see here. This is a rendering of that 8th century drawing. You can see there's Hashem, there's Asherah.
Wow. Well, I know it looks like an African like African
It's
statue.
Paleo Hebrew.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
maybe
it's
that's just
like
how the people.
That's how they were drawn.
Somebody said girthy, bro.
Yeah,
you
really.
guys are crazy.
True, girthy, true. All right, well, but look, Louis, good luck on your journey.
Well,
we might disagree,
yeah.
but you know,
And I'll
it's
come back
hard.
up.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I'll come back up when I know more, and I'll call this one a draw.
All right, fair enough, Louis. Take care.
All right.
Call it a draw. Fair enough. All right, let's read some super chats. From Nectu with the $2. Here, I found this super chat under the couch. Indeed you did. I'm glad that you found some. I appreciate that. From JM with the $2 with the thumbs up. Thumbs up to you too. From Mike Angel with the $2. I am omnipotent too. I take a blue pill. Yeah, there you go. From Totodile with the $2. Blitz, you need a soundboard. I have a soundboard. From Taylor Galileo with the $5. The Big Bang is just as loud as that guest's mom when Blitz gave her a lesson on the Big Bang. Ayo, let's go. From Cherry Bomb Games with the $5. Man, this Eve person really gets around. Good for her, right? Like, I didn't know Eve was my mom. From Mike Angel with the $5. I shit you not, ChatGPT won't process an image for Adam and Eve clam slam. To be fair, I wouldn't either, and I have a rational agency. From Aliv04N with the $3. Your YouTube shorts and for your infinite patience. Well, thank you, Aliv. I appreciate that. And from Kazla Baker with the $5. I appreciate your teaching content and your patience in debating. As a believer, I don't think the faith is provable. I'm always seeking to learn more. Right, if it's not provable, but we have reasons to think otherwise, then I think that we probably have good reason to just reject it, right? That's my point. All right, he couldn't and he wouldn't. This is what we see on the... Oh, my bad. Sorry about that. All right. So there was somebody who's gonna come up straight out of Stray who wanted to talk about creation, but it looks like they're not in the comments anymore and they're not in the chat anymore. So it seems like that they don't get to come up today. Bummer for them. Bummer for Straight Outta Stray. Such is the nature of things. But by the way, so when he first came up, I'm like, I didn't want to assume he was a Black Hebrew Israelite, but like, there's not a lot of Jewish people who come up who are, or not a lot of people who talk about like Jewish tradition and aren't Black Hebrew Israelites, because there's just not a lot of Jewish people in the world. But you probably noticed that my tone and my interactions with him immediately softened. No, he's not a Black Hebrew Israelite. He's just a guy, maybe he's a black guy, I don't know, who wants to convert. That doesn't make you a Black Hebrew Israelite. He's just a guy who wants to convert to Judaism, which, you know, cool. No, he's not even a Messianic Jew. No, he's not even a Messianic Jew. He doesn't think the Messiah has come yet. That's the point. So that's why I was like, oh, he's just a guy who wants to convert to Judaism. Cool. Yeah. His comments about like Israel and Greater Israel, that was concerning, and that's cringe. But like, he wasn't like some guy who he wasn't like a BHI, right? Yeah. So like that's why I was like, oh, okay, cool. We're in agreement here. Well, we're not in agreement, but at least I know that he's not going to be like a raging racist, right? Okay, let's bring up another guest. We do have some guests from Discord, so let's bring up Gur. Yeah, so just to be clear, it's cool that he's like just a guy who wants to convert to Judaism, because he's not a racist. He's not a BHI. He's not a Hotep. That's the point.
Hello.
Gur, how's it going?
Hi, Blitz. How's it going?
I'm doing all right.
Just a preface, before we get started, I'm super sleep deprived. I'm probably not in the best headspace to like
Bummer.
debate, but I do have some like actual stuff of substance to talk about.
Yeah, sure.
Just a little though.
So, do you believe that the world was created?
Not necessarily in a literal sense of creationism. Like, if you mean by creationism, like the doctrine that a separate, fully formed divine agent once stood outside reality and produced the universe and life by fiat and like a discrete historical, then no, that position is like pretty untenable. I think the deeper question that needs to be asked is like how reality came to be in the first place.
Good question.
And I guess the first major point that I'd like to posit is truth as the unity of fact and falsity, and essentially
Truth as the unity of
bifurcation.
fact and falsity. I don't know what any of this means.
I'll get into it. And then besides that, the bifurcation of dualistic binaries as a sort of precondition and mechanism for perception.
Sorry, what?
The first point I'd like to get into is truth. I want to posit truth as a concept as the unity of both fact and falsity.
I
so, like, for
I just
example,
want to double check. You
could,
you believe in a god, right?
yeah, but not in a conventional way.
In what way?
In a sort of source principle sort of way, like not even
Could the god not have agency?
I could put it in a nutshell. Yeah, it could
Okay.
not have agency.
Then it seems like that's compatible with creationism being false.
I mean,
Because creation
it's a different
implies
way.
intent, and if you don't have agency, you don't have intent.
It's not necessarily that black and white. I can put it into a quick nutshell for you. Take the idea of nothingness. Every description that we can try and come up with or posit for the idea of nothingness is just wrong, because a description in and of itself is a thing, and to exist is to be a thing, and every idea we can come up with nothingness is just euphemism for an absence, right? A zero is
Yeah. So
placeholder
look,
for an
I'm
absence.
willing to grant that nothing can't that there can't be a nothingness, that there must
There
have always
can't be a
been
nothingness,
somethingness.
therefore something.
Yeah,
Therefore
but that
something
doesn't
always,
mean
right?
creation.
It doesn't mean creation, but it does necessitate the fact that there is like an undeniable thing that I guess create. Yeah, I get like, as I said in the beginning,
I'm okay granting that there's some
do
necessary
disagree.
necessary foundation to the universe.
Like with the literal.
I just
with
don't
the
think that it
literal
has
sense
agency.
of creationism. Yeah, not agency in the sense of like a will or an ego, or like a desire even to do anything, but agency in the sense of its being is an act of its own being through an act of its non-being being impossible, in a sense of nothingness being impossible. Like
Look, it just seems like that there's not a lot of actual like meaningful disagreement here.
I see is
And you
I
sound very
thought-
sleepy. So I'm gonna
I
let you
thought
go, Gur. Go take a nap. You sound very sleepy. Let's read a super chat we have from Bill Ashby with the £2. He's Dalton many years ago. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So hopefully, Louis Santana will do what Dalton did, and we'll find out that it's also not true. All right, so let's bring up. So Stan, there's a guy named Stan Halen, which is a great name, by the way. Who's not in the guest box, but he is currently in the chat, and he was citing the BGV theorem and all sorts of stuff like the Big Bang and all of this stuff. So like he should join, and we can talk about it. Let's see if he is brave soul. I sent him an invite. I'm watching. He hasn't rejected it. Calling him sleepy or so. He said he was sleepy. He said he didn't get a lot of sleep. What? I wasn't accusing him of being like dumb or something. He just sounded like he was sleeping. He sounded like he was sleepy, that he didn't get enough sleep because he said that he didn't get enough sleep. Yeah, I'm specifically bringing up Stan because Stan Halen because he brought up the BGV theorem, and I loved that shit. That shit's my jam. Okay, it looks like Stan is not coming up. Shame on Stan. Bummer. Stan is now radio silent. All right, let's bring up another guest then. Let us bring up... If Stan pops up in the guest box, I will definitely bring him up. But for the meantime, let's bring up Abdullah.
Hi, Dr. Blitz. How are you doing?
Abdullah, it's going all right. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I just found out that you're Jewish.
Yep.
Or you used to be religious?
No, I was never religious.
Okay, got it.
But I am Jewish. Those two things are not in contention, but go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. I have a basic argument for creationism.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, whether you believe in the infinite big bounds origin of the universe, or whether you believe we are living in a black hole inside of another black hole, but or whether you believe in a Big Bang, the theory of Big Bang, there has to be an origin.
Why?
We cannot have an infinite regress.
Why not?
Can we accept that?
No. Why can't we have an infinite
why?
regress?
Because then we won't be here.
Why? How does that follow?
I can give you an analogy.
Please.
So, for example, we were standing in a queue,
Mm-hmm.
and there were an infinite people in front of you to get something, to buy
Mm-hmm.
something.
So there's like a front of the line at the
yeah.
and then there's then if there's a front of the line, there can't be an infinite number of people between me and the people at the front.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that infinite regress is illogical.
But there's not a beginning of time, so there can be an infinite amount of time in the past. Yeah. So
there's no beginning of time.
If there's no beginning of time, then that means that time has every day has a day before it, which is an infinite regress.
Yes, but there's no the logical contradiction of infinite regress comes to when analyzing cause and effect.
What's the contradiction?
So there can't be an infinite regress of causes.
Why not?
There has to be the first domino block that needs to fall.
Why?
So that we can exist.
Why? Why couldn't it have just always been falling?
But then, do you think that we are not existing at this moment?
No, it would have just. Of course, we exist. The point is that dominoes would have always been falling as you go back and back into the past. Mm-hmm. What's the issue? What's the contradiction?
The issue. Yes. So the issue is that there needs to be an origin to explain
That's
why.
That's the conclusion that you're trying to come to.
Existence.
That's the conclusion again. I'm asking, what's the contradiction in thinking that there isn't an origin?
I'm sorry, is like the infinite regress not a logical fallacy?
No,
that's
it's not.
what I've been told.
It's not. You will find nowhere in the literature do they conclusively deduce a contradiction from an infinite regress.
Okay, so let's go to the fine-tuning argument, I guess.
Sure.
Let's say you were stranded on an island and you found you found a ball, a perfectly red ball.
Yep.
Okay.
Found a ball.
Do you think?
Got it.
Yeah. So do you think someone made it?
Maybe not.
Like you had no
I know if I know nothing about it, then if I know nothing about it, then
yeah.
I probably won't be able to come to a conclusion. I wouldn't know.
But you see, there's a design, right?
No, I don't know. I don't know how seeing a red ball means that there's a design.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like if there's if you see design in something,
how do I see design in something?
The complexity.
Complexity.
How there's,
so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
See this cube?
Yeah.
If you saw this cube, would you think that it has a designer if you were on a desert island?
Yes.
Okay, well, you'd be wrong because this is a naturally occurring pyrite or pyrite crystal. So it doesn't have a designer. So coming to the conclusion just because something has a geometric structure that it's designed is false. It's just not a good way of coming to what's true. Because in fact, actually, it came from something like this. Which is, it's just how these crystals form. They form this way.
So let me ask you something. If let's say you had non-organic matter, right? And given enough time, without any sort of external agency, will that non-organic matter turn into, let's say, a human?
Apparently, yeah.
And do you have proof for this?
We have evidence. So the entire evolutionary entire field of evolutionary biology is evidence for the evolutionary process, and then all of the evidence that we have from origins of life researchers is the evidence for abiogenesis.
Yeah. So abiogenesis. I've studied evolutionary biology myself, and there's a lot of missing data in that regard when it comes to macroevolution.
Which is what? What's the missing data? Sorry, I'm looking for something.
What?
I can still hear you. Don't mind me.
Yeah. So analyzing the fossil record and coming to conclusion that species changes from one species to another. It's pretty. It's a weak argument in my opinion.
Well, you said that there's missing evidence. You didn't say that you just don't like the argument, right?
Yeah, but so there's like a lot of models.
A lot of models for what? Are you talking about models for evolution?
For macro.
There's not a lot. There's not a lot of models. No.
There's a punctuated equilibrium model. There was another model that said that everything slightly evolves. So
these are not in conflict,
the field of
by the way.
Yeah.
Slow evolution is not in conflict with punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah.
You're saying that it is falsifiable. Okay, so how did you falsify it?
But how did you come to the conclusion that abiogenesis is true?
Wait, why are we changing the topic from evolution to abiogenesis now?
Because I believe in microevolution. I just don't believe in macroevolution.
Okay, well, macroevolution is a real thing that we have buttloads of evidence for.
Like what?
Tiktaalik is like one of the most quintessential pieces of evolutionary evidence that we find in the wild.
Tiktaalik?
Yeah, do you know what Tiktaalik is?
Are you talking about the moths?
No, it's an organism called Tiktaalik.
No, never heard of it.
Okay, well then you clearly haven't looked into evolution all that much. I thought that you studied evolutionary biology.
Yeah, I got an A. I guess it wasn't enough.
I guess not.
But it was just an elementary course.
Okay, so let me show you. Here's a Wikipedia page that you can always go look at yourself. It's called Tiktaalik. So this is an organism that was predicted to exist by evolutionary biologists. It was predicted to exist in a certain fossil layer at a certain time period in a certain place. And essentially, it was predicted to exist because if evolution is true, then one would expect to find fossils of organisms that are kind of like part fish, part land animal. Not like it's like part fish, part tetrapod, if you will. And so the idea being that if evolution is true and if our understanding of the evolutionary history is correct, then we would expect to find a transitionary animal between, you know, say 400 million years ago and 350 million years ago at a certain layer in the geological strata, in certain kinds of locations where there were like shallow seas and like lake beds and riverbeds and these kinds of things. And so this was predicted. And so some scientists went out and they started looking in the places that were predicted, and they found it in one of the first places that they started looking. The evolutionary model made a prediction, a specific prediction in particular about the kinds of fossil layers it would be found in. The scientists went out and looked, and then it was found in that kind of fossil layer, which is like that's just how you do science. You make a prediction. If the prediction comes true, you have evidence for your theory. And so this is a great example of evidence for evolution, for macroevolution, in fact.
Yeah, but that's a lot of assumption work, right? Why
what
can't we
assumption
just say
work?
that
This is just how science works.
microevolution?
For example, this is a prediction of macroevolution. Do you understand that? This is a prediction of macroevolution.
How do you differentiate macroevolution from microevolution?
You're the one who's making the distinction. Macroevolution is just what happens when you have microevolution happening for millions of years, right? Like it's.
Yeah, but that when a species changes from one species to another, that's macroevolution.
No,
we don't have any
macroevolution isn't some macroevolution. By the way, A, yes, we do. We absolutely have evolution of speciation events. But B, this is an example of not only species changing. This is evolution of like genera changing.
But
or perhaps like this is a brand new genus, right? That didn't exist prior.
We know that a lot of organisms existed in the past that are no longer here. They've gone extinct.
So this is an example of an organism that didn't exist prior to, say, I don't know, 400 million years ago or so. And then it did exist, and it's a brand new genus.
Okay, so there's a lot of assumption work that goes into this. I know that for a fact.
I mean, you can keep saying that, but this is how we do science. I don't know how to tell you otherwise. Like, we do science, you make predictions, you have some model, you use that model to make predictions, you check whether those predictions come true. If they do come true, that's evidence for your model. And that's what happened with Tiktaalik.
Yeah, but the thing is that in microevolution, you could argue for the same case. For example,
no, you can't, because this organism didn't exist prior to about 400 million years ago.
Okay, but
so like it came from somewhere, right?
Yeah, but for example, fish on the surface, they're normal. They have eyes, and they don't have bioluminescence. But when you go deep in the ocean, for example, in the Mariana Trench or deeper parts of the waters, then you find fish that are blind and have bioluminescence. So
cool.
You have to.
Is it microevolution when fish grow arms?
Could be. Who knows?
No, it's not. That's not what microevolution is.
Well,
otherwise you would just agree that microevolution is changes. Microevolution is changes between species. If you have two different organisms, one has arms and the other doesn't, those are different species.
No, it could just be adaptation.
No, they'd be literally different species, right? Can you give me any example of a single species where some part of the population has arms and another part of the population doesn't have arms?
There could be abnormalities. For example, in
humans, that's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe this is a mutation. Except they found 60 of them, more than 60 of them actually. So it's not just some random mutation. They found more than 60 of these things that are all the same.
Okay. Let's leave abiogenesis for some time. Let's go to the starting of the universe. Yeah.
Sure.
the starting of the universe, whether you believe there was
Sorry,
a
my
big
neck just
bounce
broke from that enormous pivot. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I'm sorry. What kind of origin of universe model do you believe in?
I don't have a position on it. I'm pretty agnostic.
Okay, interesting. So whichever origin model you believe in, you know that the early state of the universe, what state was it?
It was
in?
hot.
How
It
would
was
you
hot and
describe
dense.
it?
13.8 billion years ago. It was hot and dense.
Hot and dense. And what state was it in? Like
You mean like what phase of
solid,
matter?
yeah.
It was like, depending on what time period you're talking about. It could have been a quark gluon plasma, or just a regular ionic plasma, or it could be an atomic gas. Just depends
So
on how long. It
gaseous
depends on how
phase,
long back
right?
you go. Well, no, I mean the further back in time you go, you have an atomic gas around 380,000 or 380,000 years after the Big Bang. About a second after the Big Bang, you have an ionic plasma, and then before that, you have a quark gluon plasma.
Yeah, but let's just say the early universe was in a
early
gaseous
universe-
state.
So the
Would-
earliest
would
way
I
that we
be
can
wrong in
describe it
saying
would be
that?
it would be a quark gluon plasma.
If I said that the early universe was in a gaseous state, would
Yes,
that
you'd be wrong. Yes.
But it was in a gaseous state.
At
Wasn't
some point 380,000 years after the Big Bang.
Yeah, it would still be considered the early universe.
Okay, well then the current universe is also in a gaseous state.
And
By
no,
that same
because
reasoning.
there's
The vast
we have
majority of the
solid
matter in the
now.
universe, the vast majority of the matter in the universe is gaseous.
Yeah, but we still have solid matter now, right?
Okay. But yeah, the vast majority is in a gaseous state, so
Okay, so I would like to read you a verse from my holy book, Quran.
sure.
Chapter 41, verse 11. Then he turned towards the heaven when it was still like smoke, saying to it and to the earth, submit willingly or unwillingly. They both responded, we submit willingly. So
smoke's not gas, right?
well, it is a gaseous state.
No, it's not. Here you go. Smoke's not a gas, it's an aerosol. And what makes smoke smoke is the suspension of particulates. So an aerosol is the suspension of particulates and gases. The smoke is the aerosol. Without the particulates, you would have no smoke.
It says still like smoke.
Okay. So it's like smoke in the sense that it's like particulate matter.
Gaseous.
That is no. Smoke's not like gaseous. Smoke's not gaseous though.
I mean,
so it's like smoke.
It kind of is.
No, it's not. It's an aerosol.
Huh?
An aerosol is not a gas.
Well, that's just being that's just being particular about meanings.
Yeah, you're trying to. So first of all, the beginning of the universe, if there was a beginning, the Big Bang was not a gas, and smoke is also not a gas. So, what are we doing?
Well, it says, okay, that was just one verse. I could show you like so many verses that has been proven.
Yeah, what about the verses that have been proven wrong?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, was the moon split in two?
We believe in miracles, so it could.
So you think that the moon was split in two?
Well, there is a theory. If you know about Gaia, the early moon.
The moon was split in two during Muhammad's day.
Body.
No, the moon was split in two during Muhammad's day. It wasn't split in two 4.5 billion years ago.
I know, but I'm saying that if that could happen, why not this? And
because if the moon was split in two, then the Chinese astronomers would have recorded it.
Chinese astronomers would have recorded it. Well, if I said that there has been a Chinese painting about the moon splitting. How would you wish change?
Yeah, does it date to Muhammad's era?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
it does.
Show me it. Let's see it.
Let me find it. Because I heard a person who basically how do you say a person who appreciates painting, like appreciates the value of a painting?
An art critic, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. It's that person, and he found a client in China who had this exact painting.
Okay, so where can I see this painting?
I have to find that out.
Chinese
I'm sorry,
painting
I
moon
can't straight away.
split into. We'll just Google it together.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, we don't have to worry about the AI overview. We can just go look at like Wikipedia. We can maybe this Reddit thread is useful. Anyone? Okay, this is deleted. The Sui Dynasty 2 Moons 613 record. Okay, let's go see the Sui Dynasty 2 Moons 613. Okay, so I'm trying to find something about this 2 moons. And there's nothing about 2 moons there. Let's see what resources. Sui Dynasty World History, maybe something like here. Moon? Nope, nothing about moons there. I'm just looking for the sources. Okay, so these look like they're from Reddit, so let's not use those. Okay, so then maybe we look at the splitting of the moon. Now, a NASA photograph. Okay, so is this the splitting of the moon? No, it's a Ryle, or it's a Rill, I think it is. So I'm still looking for this Chinese painting, moon split in two. I mean, you know, the AI says that there's no authentic or recognized classical Chinese painting depicting a split moon, but we can go see if we can find anything deeper. I guess there's an Instagram post, there's a Reddit post, there's some viral stuff, maybe here, authentic Sira. Miraculous discovery, 1500-year-old moon split painting leads art appraiser to Islam. Okay, yeah. let's look. Okay, so here we're talking about a renowned art appraiser, brother Vikram Negi, has embraced Islam. Okay, let's keep reading. He's an expert in the scientific study and forensic analysis of ancient paintings, shared a profound experience that led him to the light of Islam. He shared this on an online Q&A session with Muftir Yasir Nadim Al-Wadiji.
Yeah, that's a scholar's name.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I understand. Okay, so the very next day after the conversion, along with his colleagues, embarked on a mission to China to appraise a collection of 40 ancient paintings found in a 150-year-old building. Through rigorous scientific methods, okay, it's a little bit suspect, including evaluation of the frame, detailed analysis of the papyrus-like material and ink composition, is that parentheses, and carbon dating, brother Vikram and his team concluded that this sketch was an astonishing 1,415 years old. And what did this sketch depict? A serene scene of a tiger family drinking water by a waterfall with one astonishing detail. The moon in the sky was split in two. The collection included a subsequent frame. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so wait a minute. Is there no picture of this thing? Oh, story reported from here. Okay,
it's like,
let's go to
it's a unique art.
Oh, this is from a YouTube video. Now we can't watch the whole YouTube video, but what we can do is we can. So this is from a Discord call. I'm just scrolling through to see if he.
I think that's a scholar.
Shows us. Well, he claims to be a scholar. He is a YouTuber. Yeah, so they don't show the they don't show the painting anywhere either. That's suspicious. So this is the original source. This YouTube video is the original source for this claim, but they don't show the painting. They don't show any evidence that it's 1,500 years old. We can't confirm that any of this is real. So like, why should I believe any of this?
But you asked me for some evidence, and I gave you.
This isn't evidence. This isn't evidence.
Testimony is still evidence.
Oh, okay. Technically true, but I heard from a guy that that Muhammad actually didn't hear from Gabriel, and instead Muhammad was just making it up. So that's evidence too.
But you have to show me. Just
I have to show you the guy. Okay. Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up for you.
And he has to prove it as well. Just not it can't be just a claim.
Oh wait a minute, it has to prove it now?
Obviously, like
Wait, how do
there,
you-
there needs to be some sort of a
this-
logical.
But this guy
proof
didn't
or-
prove it either.
But he told you about the description, and he told you about the
said
dating.
it. He just said it. He didn't prove it.
Mm-hmm. But
So if I find, if I find a guy who says
you
that,
might have to.
if I find a guy that says that Muslim made it up,
then, right? You might have to search the Chinese.
why
mean,
should I have to search
we
the
can't read
Chinese?
Chinese?
Why
right?
should I have to search the Chinese when the guy who found it wasn't Chinese?
Because he went to China.
Yeah, but he wasn't Chinese, and he was the guy who found it.
Yeah, but what if like the Chinese
Allegedly.
media reported it?
Well, then you should go find that.
No, but I don't have to because I trust the person. And if
Here you go.
trust
By the way,
person,
here's an article. More evidence: Muhammad wrote the Quran with his own hand.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this substantial evidence has been provided that Muhammad was not only literate but also wrote the original Quran with his own hand. So there's your testimony.
No, but how?
Because
does
somebody
prove
said it. Oh, they proved it because they wrote that there was another source that says it. That's the proof. Oh, and in fact, there's somebody
okay.
in the chat. There's somebody in the chat who's testifying to Muhammad making it up.
But then how do you believe anything if there's no mass transmission of testimony? How do you believe anything?
Well, there are reliable methods of doing history. There are reliable methods of doing science. And so as long as the methods that are being used are reliable, then I don't have a problem believing it. But just the claims of like a guy in a Discord call, no less, saying, "Yeah, this happened to me."
That's a Discord call. I think
it literally was a Discord call, by the way.
No,
it
I think that's a scholar.
No, it literally was a Discord call. I can show you the call.
Yeah, but even if it's a Discord call, I think it might have been like a question and answer session or something like that.
It was literally a Discord guy. He's a YouTuber.
Yeah, a scholar on YouTube. There's
Okay.
many like him.
Is he a reliable scholar? Do you know who he is? Have you heard of him before?
Kind of. Not. I don't have extensive information about him.
So, do you remember what his name was?
Yeah, Mufti Yasir, I think.
So that was his first name. You don't know his name?
Mufti Yasir. If you could pull that page again, I could
Well,
read
yeah,
it.
but you don't. If you're familiar with him, then you would know his name.
Mufti Yasir. I think it said Nadim. Yasir
Yep.
Nadim.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him. I'm not entirely familiar with him. But he is a reliable scholar.
How do you know he's
in
reliable?
Islam.
How do you know he's reliable?
Because you can find like so many of his
are you
works.
familiar with-
He has like a
Are you familiar with any of his
school
works?
Yeah, he has his own school in USA.
Does he?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, okay. Do you know if he's Sunni or Shia?
You know about the Sunni and Shia?
Yeah. Do you know which one he is?
Yeah, he's Sunni.
Okay. You know, I'll believe you. I'll believe you that he's a scholar of some kind. I guess he's also a YouTuber. I guess that's what he. Oh no, he's a
and he
debater.
has
He's
a
like me. So
PhD as well.
wait, am I a scholar now? Do I get to be a scholar?
I mean, if you have a PhD, yeah, I guess.
do.
in
I do
your
have a
field,
PhD.
You might be a scholar.
Let's go. I'm a scholar. Okay, so that means that that
Yeah.
means that my claims are reliable, right?
Yeah. With backed evidence.
But he didn't present the evidence in his
I don't
YouTube
think
video.
He was the one who.
मेरा कोई
presented
सवाल
the
नहीं है।
evidence.
Nobody presented the evidence. We don't see any. It's just a conversation. There's no actual evidence that's presented. See, like we can scroll through the whole thing. There's no actual evidence that's presented. It's just a Discord call, and you can tell it's you couldn't see it. It is a Discord call. You can see it on the right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Discord call that he's doing. That's the evidence that we're talking about here.
Okay, but then you might. I might have to come back with another source then, some Chinese media or something.
Yeah, you should do that.
Yeah, because but you know I wasn't lying, right? Like there was a person who said this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, I don't know if there was a person who said this. I don't know if one of these people in this YouTube video are the person that makes it's like the origin of the claim, or if like they're just relaying a story that they heard. I don't know. But the point is that even if the person who's making the claim is here, they're not presenting any evidence. They're just making a claim.
But even aside from this, I can present you the mass transmission testimony, like the whole chain. I can provide you that from the earliest generation.
Does that make it true? Does that make it more likely to be true, or?
I mean, if it's from his companions, and if it's linked with, like if there's not a disconnected chain of transmission, and if every person in that chain is reliable.
Well, that's the question: are they reliable?
Yeah, and if there's mass transmission, then obviously I would highly believe that claim. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you do the same?
No, I would just think that it was invented a long time ago. Somebody made it up a long time ago instead of recently. That's all that implies, right?
Yeah, but mass transmission of testimony should be an evidence for everyone.
Okay, so does that mean that the Christian Bible is evidence for Christianity?
Well, is there mass transmission of its like the source of Bible?
We actually have texts of the Bible that are older than the Quran.
Texts of the Bible that are I'm saying, are they from the period of Jesus Christ? We
don't have any texts from Jesus, but Jesus didn't claim to have written the Bible. So
yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
We wouldn't expect it to be from the time of Jesus. Although, yeah, I mean, it's just not the case that that's what we would expect. Nobody's claiming that Jesus wrote them.
That's what I'm saying. That if you're going to believe a claim, it needs to be from the it needs to be contemporary to the source.
It needs to be why?
Like it needs to be from the time of the source.
Why?
Because that's how you know it's original, or
do you think that like history books
involved?
Do you think that history books are not reliable, even though they were written way after the events that they're describing?
That there could be some fabrication involved in history. That is it not possible?
I think that history textbooks are probably more reliable than the Quran. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because they're using the historical method to try to deduce what objectively happened rather than just writing down anything.
No, but we have our own historical critical method.
Yeah, and the Quran doesn't use that.
No, but we have what's called a biography of the people involved in the chain of transmission.
Sure.
It's called Ilm al-Rijal, the information about the people involved in the chain, and
sure.
And that's how we know that the Quran was transmitted.
Look, so testimony can be evidence.
Generation to generation.
Written testimony can be evidence, and in fact, historians use written testimony quite frequently in conjunction with other things. But when you have written testimony that says one thing, and then you have evidence that indicates another thing, perhaps the opposite thing, well, then the testimony is the weaker kind of evidence. So you just reject the testimony.
Okay, but you have to. What's false in the Quran? Give me
that the
one
moon
example.
was split in two. The moon was obviously not split in two.
How do you know?
Because there's no records of it literally anywhere else. And if the moon was split in two, and keep in mind, back before smartphones and TVs and books, people spent a lot of time staring at the sky, we would see so many records about the moon being split in two. By the way, this is the same reason why we have no reason to think that zombies wandered around Jerusalem in the 1st century. Because even though the Bible says that zombies wandered around Jerusalem in the 1st century, if this happened, we would have more than one account of it. Because it's so extraordinary.
It just comes down, is there a possibility for you?
No, it's not about possibility, it's about evidence.
No, I'm asking,
not about
is
possibility.
there a possibility?
No,
But is there a
well,
possibility?
no, it's not like a physically possible thing. No,
Well, what do you mean by that?
you would need to do magic in order for that to happen. But
Is magic
isn't
possible?
no. Possibility isn't relevant here. Unicorns could possibly exist, but that doesn't mean that we're justified in believing that unicorns exist.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about possibility, it's about what the evidence is. And the evidence is that the moon was not split in two.
Okay, so I just before you kick me out, I think that's what you're probably going to do.
Well, I'm not going to kick you out, but I do have to end the live stream soon because it's, I'm 5 minutes over. But
just
go ahead. Go
one
ahead.
last verse.
Sure.
I gotta read from the Quran. Just one last thing. Yeah. Okay, so it says from chapter 41. Chapter 41. Wait just a second.
Oh, you're going to read the atheism verse. That's not really relevant. I'm familiar with it.
Which one am I talking about?
Most of them turn away so they do not hear,
No,
it is a book
it's
whose
not
verses
that,
are
it's not that.
perfectly explained, a Quran in Arabic for people who know, delivering good news and warning, yet most of them turn away so they do not hear, blah, blah, blah,
No,
blah, blah, that kind of
just
thing.
just quickly. It's chapter 52 from verse 35. So Allah basically gives an argument or asks a rhetorical question to the atheists. Or were they created by nothing? Or are they their own creators? Or
Those
did
aren't the
they
only two
create
options.
the heavens and the earth? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? In fact, they have no certainty.
Cool.
Okay, so you were saying that there
are obviously other options. The other options is that
Like
like
what?
they were created by other organisms. Obviously. Why is God doing a false
but-
dichotomy?
No, but these are not the only two possibilities.
Then why is he
just
asking
a
this?
rhetorical question?
Oh, okay. Well, it's a bad faith rhetorical question.
Because nothing cannot.
Does God
give
act in bad
birth to
faith?
something. Can something arise from absolute nothingness?
Nope, I don't think that absolute nothingness has ever existed.
Yeah, so that's basically what God is saying, that there needs to be a necessary existence that grounds reality.
Well, it doesn't have to be necessary. And that's certainly not what God's saying.
Or are they their own creators? Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna get that Chinese media link for you next time.
Please do.
Thank you so
Please
much
do.
for your time. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Sorry for the obnoxious pauses.
It's fine.
Sorry about that.
You're fine.
All right.
All right, let us let's read some super chats if there are any. We did get a few. I think Carissa sent 5 gifted subs, but for some reason I can't filter those, so I can't see it. I did see it stream through though. So thank you, Carissa. I think it was you who sent the 5 gifted subs, and if I do get it wrong, I apologize. We do have some super chats as well. And we had one new subscriber on Twitch, so that's kind of based. But anyway, that subscriber was the person who I pulled up. From Chase with the $5. I mean, I get that unboundedness is difficult to wrap your head around, but being unintuitive does not make something a contradiction. Yeah, that's the problem. All these people would benefit from studying mathematics more. From Equilibrium with the $5. Here's my daily support blitz. Keep up the good fight. Much love from South Dakota State University. Well, I appreciate you, Equilibrium. It's very much appreciated, especially as you're a college student, I imagine, because college students don't have a lot of money. So thank you so much. It's very generous. From Pensive for the lava lamp. Happy Monday. I do need to get a lava lamp at some point. I just need somewhere to put it, right? Because as it stands, I use a green screen. So like, I don't know where I would put the lava lamp so that it's on screen. From Professional with the $10, just ignore the fact that macro and microevolution are descriptions of the same thing, just different scales of time. Only reason there is a distinction made is because creationists want to cope. Yeah, that's very true. Macroevolution is just microevolution over a long time. It's just when a lot of it happens, right? So I don't understand that at all, but they like to make the distinction, and so we can talk about giant changes like the existence of Tiktaalik. Then we also have from Bacon and Bush on Cash App with the $20. For hey there, Dr. Blitz, thank you so much, Bacon and Bush. It's always good to see you. And from Rob with the W Blitz $2 Cash App is very appreciated. Oh, and then also, lots of Cash Apps today, from Jacob Patterson with the $10 for props to you for spreading awareness. I do my best. I think it's valuable to at least talk about science. And, you know, as far as creationism is concerned, it's like really bad. Like the fact that people think that creationism is true leads to things like, I guess, what was it, the state of Kentucky that tried to make creationism be taught in schools back in the early 2000s. Like, it's very cringe and very bad, and we shouldn't do that. And I just want to double check one more place. That is everything. So y'all, I am going to end the live stream here. I have to go eat lunch. I have to go make some coffee. And then I have a meeting about some interesting research that I've been working on with one of the people who just gave us a super chat, actually. So I will see you guys tomorrow for Ask a Physicist. Make sure to stop